The following podcast contains spoilers and adult language and human tears. The secretions of the lacrimal gland containing oils, salts, proteins, and stress hormones. The tears of joy and those of sorrow have different chemical compositions.
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
G'day, mate. I'm Steve.
And this week we're discussing the film Furiosa, Mad Max Saga, in our continuing series of let's watch apocalypse movies because it can't get any worse in real life. So let's watch something to sort of lose our mind in that.
That's right.
And pretend it ain't that bad. At least we've got water.
Hey, nothing to get your mind off the possibility of the world turning into a dark dystopian future by watching a movie set in a dark dystopian future.
Hooray! So before we get into our discussion on the movie itself, let's just do a quick rapid fire what we think of this movie. I went first last episode, so Steve, it is your turn. What are your sort of quick thoughts about Furiosa?
I think it's if you like Fury Road, and who didn't, but if you're a fan of Fury Road, this is just like a second helping, right? They just George Miller kind of doubles down, and it's just like Fury Road, but in many ways it's bigger and crazier even than Fury Road. I think comparing the two of them, and how can you not, because they are very directly linked, that I think Fury Road is a little bit of a better film than this one is. And the only reason why I say that is that Fury Road came out first. And, it sort of kind of set the bar very, very high.
Extremely high, yeah.
It's no matter how great this movie was, the expectations of topping Fury Road from the fans, I think, was something that was too big. It was too much. And so the result was, when you came out of this movie, you're kind of like, wow, that was really great. It wasn't Fury Road, but it was really great.
Yeah.
But now that it's shown up on Max, and I can watch it anytime. I've watched it multiple times, and it is an amazing film. And just again, comparing it to Fury Road, though, Fury Road I think was better. I think that was a higher level than this. Still though, this movie, some amazing stunts, some amazing sets and costumes, and all the production design is through the roof. And we get to go back to the Citadel and the Bullet Farm and Gastown and all the places that we went to or heard about in the first movie, and we expand upon that. And if anything else, this movie is amazing just for Chris Hemsworth, because oh my God, is he amazing in this film, and so not Thor. Right, yes. So not anything you've ever seen Chris Hemsworth do, as an acting performance. So yeah, a lot of great stuff for it. Just again, overall, not quite there to top Fury Road. Well, What did you think?
I agree with a lot of that, and we saw this together opening weekend.
We did. In IMAX, I believe.
We sure did. And if you have an opportunity to watch it in the IMAX, please do so. And I think for all the things that make this a great IMAX movie, it's still it still goes, I would say, toe to toe with Fury Road on a few things. great action sequences. Like there's just nothing like them. You've never seen things like this before. Great action sequences, and just visuals that need to be seen on such a large scale, on a large screen, as it were. I think I agree with you it doesn't quite live up to the Fury Road, and I think some of that has to do with it's going to sound weird, but I think in Fury Road we had a handful of characters to follow that we were supposed to connect with in some way. You know, we had Max, we have Furiosa, we have the 5 wives and the 5 treasures, and Nux, I would say, are the sort of the core of the group we're supposed to have some emotions and, you know, feelings about, and then all the supporting cast around it. In this one, you know, Furiosa has to hold the whole mantle of the movie on her shoulders, and she does, between the actress and the stuff that they gave her. But I think it misses out on a lot of the interaction stuff. I mean, a lot of Furiosa's story, which we'll get into when we talk about our top points, a lot of Furiosa's origin story is she spends years not talking, like not what. So you miss out on interaction and things like that, which were some of the best parts of Fury Road. You know, not a ton of dialogue, but the little bits you got were very like whip smart and said a lot. And in this case, Dementis gets a majority of the dialogue of the movie, and and he's not the main character. So it's like, and you're not meant to connect to him ultimately. So I just feel like that's the part about Furiosa that's missing that I think you got in Fury Road. I don't think it makes it a lesser movie. I think when you compare it, like you were saying, if you watched this on its own and didn't watch Fury Road at all, it's such a fantastic movie all on its own. But when you compare it to Fury Road, which you are going to do, like you said, it is the successor of that movie, the next thing, I think, like you said, it falls a little short of that. And I don't think it makes it a bad movie by any means, and you did not say that either. So I think that ultimately we are both going to be talking about a movie that we thought was pretty great and had a lot of really great stuff in it, entertaining, fun to watch, and it's definitely a highly recommended movie. I'm curious, I'd love to see if there's someone out there who had never watched Fury Road and then watched Furiosa and then Fury Road after. Like, I'm curious what that would be like. But I don't know. I'll never experience that because we did it the other way around, so I wouldn't know. But yeah, still great movie. It's a little, like you said, I agree with you. It's not as good as Fury Road, but I think still as a standalone movie, I still think it ticks a lot of the boxes. Not all of them, but it does a lot for sure. So yeah. Now, before we get into our individual points as well, we're going to remind you who've seen this movie, because if you haven't seen this movie, why are you listening? If you haven't seen the movie, shut this off and go and watch it. It's on Max right now. Go watch it.
Just hit pause. Go spend 2 hours and 28 minutes.
And then
come back and then hit play again, and we'll be here. Look, we'll just wait. We'll
wait right here. Okay, you're back. Okay, great.
All right.
So before we discuss,
pretty great, right?
Yeah. So before we discuss our points, let's remind you of the plot of the film. So the movie description itself, Steve, that's your little job there in the apocalypse. So take it away.
All right. Well, this week's episode is being brought to you by...
G'day, war boys. Are you looking for a future in driving? Are you a dog boy looking to move up to Black Thumb? Are you a girl taken from the green place of many mothers, forced to watch your mother die, and then grow up in a world of slavery and barbarism, all the while plotting your escape and return with a peach pit you somehow kept secret all this time? Are you tired of finishing your runs on the Fury Road with no convoy or crew? Well, then enroll today in Praetorian Jack's Road Warrior Driving School. You give him time, and old Jack will teach you everything you need to know about road war. And if you survive everything you take on together, you'll have all the skills you need to get wherever you want to go. So don't be a Dementus. Sign up today at Praetorian Jack's Road Warrior Driving School. Because after all, if you want to get out of here, you talk to Jack.
All right. Well, I mean, I want to sign up. I want to learn Road War, don't you?
I mean, I guess so. I think they would take women. I mean, they took Furiosa and he taught her.
It said so right there. If you were a girl taken from the green place, I mean,
Exactly. So yeah. I mean, I've always wanted to drive a big rig. So
there you go.
Why wouldn't I?
Yeah, I drive a small rig, and I can tell you, it is pretty great.
Yes, you do.
All right, so the film in question that we are reviewing today is once again Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, and the description that we have is as follows. As the world fell, young Furiosa is snatched from the green place of many mothers and falls into the hands of a great biker horde led by the warlord Dementus. Sweeping through the wasteland, they come across the citadel presided over by the Immortan Joe. While the two tyrants war for dominance, Furiosa must survive many trials. Ooh, many trials, like court trials? As she puts together the means to find her way home. And that is your film description.
Not bad. IMDb does okay once the movie's over and done and it's gone, and it's not, it's 2 hours to describe as opposed to when we do an episode and they're giving us just like, a sentence about a 30-minute episode. So thank you.
Right.
Thanks, IMDb. We're going to get into our points in just a second, but I wanted to let people know that in our last episode when we discussed Fury Road, which we love that movie, and we could, if given no constraints, talk about it for hours, and we did, and we eventually just stopped talking because we were starting to get towards a ridiculous amount, and we wanted to try out something different. We've done this before when we've discussed, say, 2 episodes of television in one podcast episode, just to keep the conversation as tight as possible. We've committed to only covering a handful of points, say. So we talked about this, and we decided that for this movie, just to sort of, and there's plenty of topics to discuss, we both did a top 10 so that we can sort of, keep it to those 10 topics. Now,
yeah,
I'm not saying we're going to be way shorter than the last episode.
Oh, it's going to be 12, 13 minutes, I think.
Yeah. But I think that it'll help keep us focused on, okay, we covered that, move on to the next thing. And then, and then we don't have to worry about going on and on and on and on if we keep to just these topics here. So, so hopefully this little experiment, and hope it works. But before we get into those, let's talk first about the writers and the director of Furiosa. So let's chat about that. I see George Miller listed there a couple times, and Nico, oh boy, butchering it, Lathoris,
Latharus, maybe. I'm not sure what the correct pronunciation is neither, but yeah. And they are, obviously George Miller, but Nico, he co-wrote Fury Road with George Miller, and there was another guy who helped out with that story. So they kind of shaved off one of the writers, and it's just these two for this one. So again, and if it all it feels similar and sounds similar and looks similar to what we saw in Fury Road. That's because basically the same team wrote this one. So, and then of course your director is the great and amazing George Miller. So obviously the look is going to be very similar to the last one and to all of his films because it's the same guy. So
yeah. Let's start with your point first, because I think, if we're going slightly chronologically, this would definitely be the best way to start because it starts with the History Man talking. So what's your first point
does.
there?
Yeah, and I think at the end of Fury Road, we had a graphic of a quote from the History Man, right? Where
Yes,
he talks about sort of like, how can we survive or whatever he said. And I remember you made a point of it.
Yes, I did.
In that podcast. And so they kind of, again, George Miller wanting to kind of double down and even go one step further. Now this time we get to actually hear the History Man, and we're introduced to that character in this film. We actually meet the History Man a little later on, and we hear him here in this case. And he has this quote where he says, as the world falls around us, how must we brave its cruelties? And I believe the shot we see him in, he's kind of by himself, and it's like a night shot, and he looks very, very wise, and we see that he, his skin is just covered in writing, like his whole body is tattooed, but it's all words. Yeah. And literally it's like stories and facts and anecdotes and things about the old world, because he's the History Man, and he's sort of like the guardian of the old knowledge of the before time, or whatever you want to call it. And so he's a very interesting character that we kind of meet. He's certainly not a big part of the movie, but he's present throughout the whole movie, which is really interesting.
I always felt he was kind of like a Greek chorus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's got the little commentary of what's going on, was very knowledgeable. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he does, he tries to help the young Furiosa a little bit, early on. But yeah, you're right. He does the Dementus's bidding when he has to. And I think at one point he tells Furiosa, early on, he said, make yourself invaluable and Dementus will always have a place for you. Basically just saying, look, kid, if you want to make it, if you want to get out, because they're driving her around and she's in like that cage that they're, and she's literally chained up in there, and she kind of has the little thing over her face, similar to what Max had in Fury Road, but not quite as restrictive, but it's definitely like a Hannibal Lecter starter set thing, and so she's not doing well at all. They don't trust her at all to stick around. They're afraid she's gonna run off, and so he's kind of like, hey, look, if you play your cards right and prove that you have some skill, some ability, something that Dementus wants and needs, you'll punch your ticket. He'll take care of you. And she kind of is just like, yeah, go fuck yourself. But still, it's he tries to help, and then later on, he just, like you said, he kind of shows up, and it's sort of almost like a Greek chorus. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I love the idea of the History Man. Just that the visual of him is just so interesting. You've seen plenty of people in post-apocalyptic style movies where you've got some smarty pants walking around wearing wire-rimmed glasses, and they've got like a bag full of encyclopedias or books, or they're writing stuff down in books or whatever. And this is like that idea, but it's such a different take on it. And of course it's visual, because George Miller is just such a visually oriented person that he just has this vision in his mind of something, and you see that, and it's just it's you've never seen anything like that before in a movie. You've seen that type of character, but just portrayed in, this is like a completely different way to look on that old sage, the person who keeps all of the history intact, and I love it. I think it's such an amazing thing. So so let's just, since you mentioned young Furiosa, let's talk a little bit about her. I wanted to make sure we talk about here's this character that we were introduced in Fury Road, and she is fierce and she's, you know, intelligent, and she's all of these great qualities to her. And that's a really hard thing to do with a child actor. And think of how much of that first chunk of the movie is this gal, Aileen Brown, I think is her name.
Mm-hmm.
Just fantastic job of being Furiosa. I mean, there's a lot to convey as that character, and I think the young actress who played her did such a fantastic job. And right off the bat, you see how skilled Furiosa is, and how it's no surprise that she becomes the person she is. And she's immediately portrayed as crafty, and she's intelligent. She's way more than capable to handle any situation. You know, the fact that her first instinct was to cut the cord of the gas line when she and her friend, who, by the way, that's Valkyrie, who is the one that's on the top of the tower.
She's the naked girl. Yes,
yeah.
She is.
I like that connection to the other movie. I think that makes sense, because there had to be, for them to show how someone could just see an adult version of Furiosa and know in the eyes that it was that person. Yeah. So I liked that and it's just a tiny thing, and it makes that connection to the Fury Road movie. But anyway, so her first reaction, she wants Valkyrie to be safe, and, you know, you stay here, don't make any noise. And then she goes and cuts the fuel line. It doesn't work because they come up on her and grab her. But as they try to take her, all of the times that she's in captivity, she works her ass off to try and get out and get away. You know, she bites through the fuel line on the other bike.
She does, and she takes the guy's knife out of his boot.
Yeah, exactly. I love
which
it.
kind of, you know, it sets up, she kind of learns her lesson right there of, you know what, not always a great idea to have a knife in your boot, because if you have a captive, they can go for it. And so what happens at the very end of the movie, Dementis grabs her knife that she sees very obviously in the boot, and it's like she broke the blade off. It's just the handle.
Yeah, it's a great little,
yeah. And it's so funny because at that point he's like, you know, talking about how hope is stupid and it's not something you want, and then he lunges for the knife and he picks it up and he's like, that wasn't hope, that was just like an instinct, okay?
Yeah, I grabbed it. I went for it. I didn't know what I was doing. I was crazy.
It wasn't hope, though. I want you to know that. My point is still valid.
So yeah, I mean, it's to help set up a huge franchise action movie like this, you got to have someone who can handle it. And oh my God, this young actress did so great to set up all of these really great moments, and to make it, you know, you see all of those moments all the way up until I'd say she sort of transitions over into like Anya Taylor, like once she's become one of the you know, she's the what's the title she's given, she becomes one of the, you know, the grease monkeys or whatever. And so in Immortan Joe's crew, but it's like leading all the way up into that, she's trying to get away, and she's so crafty and smart about it, just so smart all the way up. I mean, she knew she was in danger from Rictus, and she made the wig so that she could get away. I mean, all of those little things that she did, so very, very smart. I love it. I think they did such a great job casting that role, and then doing all of these things to show how resourceful she is, and continues to be all the way up until, you know, her very last moments in Fury Road. So, great there. So how about your next point?
Actually, before I get into that, I thought of something else that I wanted to talk about. It's real brief, and that is one of the things that we mentioned last week about Fury Road is that the movie would move along and you'd get a big chunk of it, and then George Miller would do a fade to black, and then fade back up, and we were almost like saying that was like an act. And,
correct. Yeah.
And Fury Road had like 3 acts basically, although they're just these little black, fade to black moments to separate them. Well, in this film, he because everything has to be bigger and better, and he doubles down here, and now he actually gives us act names, and there are 5 acts in this, and so we get the kind of the little opening montage where we kind of see the world, we learn about the world falling and all of that, the nuclear war, and we're all soured, we're living the half-life, all very similar to what we heard and saw in the beginning of Fury Road. And then we get like chapter 1, and it's the pole of inaccessibility. Right, and then we're off and running, and that's sort of the story of young Furiosa being taken by Dementis and mom getting killed, and it's sort of that section of it. And then when that section finishes and it fades out, and then we go to chapter 2, which is lessons from the wasteland, and then we're off and running. And that, like I said, there are 5 of them. There was those 2. There was the stowaway, which is when the more adult Furiosa sneaks onto the war rig because she's running, she's leaving, and then 4 is Homeward, and then 5 is the final chapter, which is Beyond Vengeance, which wraps up the film. And so anyway, I just wanted to mention that we were just talking about how in Fury Road there were like kind of these implied acts, and now George is like, nope, they're acts. Absolutely.
He came around. Yes, but this is a 5-act structure in this one.
That's right, and I'm gonna name them for you. Oh, okay,
Okay.
And so that way, I spent like the whole watching the opening sequence, and I'm like, what the hell is the pole of inaccessibility mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, is there an actual pole, or is he talking about like the South Pole? I don't know. It's very strange, but I really like that, so I wanted to mention that. Nice. My first thing in there from Young Furiosa, and again, like you said, the actor is amazing. She's really good and strong, but on top of it, she and Anna Taylor-Joy have like the same eyes. I mean, it's you totally believe that Anna Taylor-Joy is like the grown-up version of that girl.
Yes, the casting choices were really spot on for this. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. It's uncanny. It's almost like scary, uncanny, like uncomfortable. Yeah. Where you're like, oh my God, how'd they do that? But yeah, she and like you said, she's strong and she's resourceful and she's brilliant and always thinking. Right, she's always looking for a way out. She's always looking at her environment. What can she use as a weapon? What can she use as a shield? I mean, she's great. Yeah. But when she does go down and she tries to disable the vehicles, and I should point out that like the Raider guys, they're like butchering the horse that the 2 of them rode out there. Yeah. To like pick the peaches or whatever they're doing, and so they're kind of occupied by butchering this meat, right? And you hear them with a closed captioning, it's much more evident, but they're like, oh my God, have you ever seen so much meat? Yeah. So these guys are like clearly like wasteland guys who are like not used to eating regularly. And so they're just like, holy crap. And so she's cutting the fuel lines, and then another Raider guy catches her, and they decide, well, we're going to take her back with us because Dementis will believe us if we have her, as opposed to just like the horse, just bringing the dead horse isn't enough. And so they're going to go back, and she manages to get away from them. And as she's running to try and climb back up the side of the wall, she is blowing this whistle that she has to kind of try and raise the alarm. Right. And it cuts back to like the main encampment of the Green Place, and her mother, I'm using air quotes here because, we really, is it her biological mother? Is she an adopted mother? I don't know. However, the woman that is raising her, she kind of hears it, but they're like sharpening a machete on a sharpening stone that is being powered by a guy on a bicycle, that's like, he's spinning the bicycle and that chain is turning the stone. So that's making kind of a high pitched sound. And so then she says, stop it. And so eventually she does hear it and it's the alarm.
Right.
That brings them on. Well, that whistle, that is a direct Easter egg to Beyond Thunderdome, to the whistle that Max uses to kind of freak out the blaster when they're fighting in the Thunderdome.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I didn't make the connection. As soon as I saw it in your notes, I was like, son of a bitch, it totally is.
It is. It's absolutely, and it's a very distinctive shaped whistle. It's not like when you or I would think of a whistle, which is the little thing with the little piece of cork inside, that you would blow in like here. I mean, it's metallic and it's very, when you see it, you're like, oh yeah, that's the whistle. I mean, it's very distinctive. Yeah. So and there's.
Yeah. And it's like the shape of it and everything. You would never, doesn't look like a traditional whistle. It's like something else. Yeah. So it's not like you could say, oh, it resembles the one from Thunderdome. No. It's probably the one from Thunderdome.
It's like George Miller probably brought it from his house and said, here, use this,
Yeah.
And actually throughout this movie, there are like several like little nods like that to the other Mad Max movies. That will, they're in there. There's no explanation. They don't draw attention to them. They're just in there.
They're just there. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that was, I remember when we were in the theater and I saw that, I was just like, ooh, yeah. So,
yeah. I've seen that whistle before.
Yeah, absolutely. So
nice.
So what's your next point?
Next up, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, we spent the entire movie of Fury Road talking about the green place and, spoiler alert, they don't find it, so we never see it. They just talk about it. Well,
they
this
go
time,
past it with all the weird crows and the
yeah, but it's not as she remembers. So we've never seen it how she remembers it.
Right. It's not nearly as green as she said it was going to be.
No. It's got a lot more mud and dirt than she remembers.
Very gray.
This is our only, this is our first viewing of it, and we only see it for, a few minutes before, they eventually leave to go after the guys that snatched Furiosa. So we only see the green place for a very short period of time, but it really impresses on you. It is the green place. It's, it's almost like this oasis in the middle of the desert, but they've got crops going. If you look at the details, you can see it looks like they've got some kind of solar power. I thought I saw some panels there.
Yep.
They're doing,
and windmills in the background.
Yes, there were some turbines there. So you just get the sense of this, insular community. They look very organized, very efficient. And ultimately, the big thing is they are secretive. Nobody knows about that place. And anytime someone stumbles upon that place, they need to kill them because the part of their survival is not being overrun by ding-dongs like that just show up in motorcycles and just want to kill their horses and drive away. They need to be able to sustain. And part of that is being a secretive society and, and flourishing there within their own little group. And I just thought it was really fantastic. Every little bit and piece that you got, all the way up until, when Furiosa's, again, air quotes mom, when Mary Javassa, when she is leaving, they're like, go together. She's like, no, I will go. And her companion is like, they can't, they have to die pretty much. They're like, you have to kill these people. They can't know, they can't tell anyone about us. We have to remain the secret. So basically what she's saying is, and they do, like, they touch foreheads in a, gesture of, I love you, please come back. But basically it's like, they're basically saying, I may never see you again. Your quest is to find these people and kill them so that they can't tell where this place is and will be safe. So it's a sacrifice to the community. And it's probably happened before. Someone's been like, I will chase them down. I will make sure that they don't tell anyone about this. You may never see me again. Goodbye. So
well,
I just thought that,
plus, they have the sniper rifle with that massive scope on it.
oh God, yeah.
Right. That, clearly they're like this, they've trained and are, very proficient in using that long range weapon so that, the wasteland's mostly flat and, they see someone driving away, they just blink them. And, she's a really good shot, that Furiosa's mom.
Oh, yeah.
But I also, keep in mind that clearly they've passed this idea of, look, if strangers show up here, we kill them all. It doesn't matter if they're good people, bad people. We're going to kill them all because that's how this place survives. And that has been absolutely passed down to Furiosa. Because first of all, when she gets taken in front of the Dementis, she doesn't say a word. Doesn't talk, hardly even reacts to them at all. And she kills the last Raider guy, the one guy who knows where that place is located.
Yep.
She throws his weird whip chain thing into the tire of his motorcycle, and it destroys his neck. Right. Yeah. And it doesn't kill him instantly, but he dies pretty quick,
Yeah.
So not only is that all the adults there are like, anybody that comes up here, we don't care who they are, we're going to kill them. And that lesson has been impressed upon Furiosa. And how old do you think Furiosa is at the beginning? What do you think? 7, 8 years old, maybe?
She's probably, I was going to say somewhere in that 7 to 9 range.
Yeah.
That's about it. She's no older than about 9, I'd say. Yeah.
So again, remember what you were taught when you were 7? Was it, kill any stranger you see? I don't think so.
Not right away, but if they, threaten you, then yeah, absolutely. Every man for himself.
All right. I stand corrected.
Yeah. So Green Place, fantastic. Nice representation. It needed to have an impression on you when you see it because it's talked about so much in that first movie that you had to have a reaction to it. And even though they don't linger, it still has to have some kind of majestic quality to it that makes you go, oh yeah, I would go back there. Right. I would fight for 20 years to try and get back there. Sure thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk about your next point because it kind of leads right into that.
Yeah, it does. So, Furiosa gets taken back. She, and the guy, it's funny because there's 4 or 5 of these Raider guys. And as they're trying to get away, Furiosa's mom is picking them off one by one. Right. And they eventually, it's down to 2 guys, and they go and they tie one of the tires to the back of one of their motorcycles, and they use it to kick up sand to kind of create almost like a smoke screen and stuff. And so finally, Furiosa's mom shoots the one of them, and so there's only the one guy left who has Furiosa on his bike, and he gets back to the camp, and he's super excited because with this information, with this girl, it's his ticket to being one of the top guys here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so of course all the other guys in Dementis' group is like, where'd you find the girl? And he's like, my lips. Dementis is here. He's like,
that's
fuck
it.
You guys. He's like, I'm not saying nothing to nobody except him, right? And so they're going to bring her in, and finally she gets in front of Dementis, and like we said, she manages to kill that guy. So now all Dementis has is her, and again, Chris Hemsworth is phenomenal, and you have to see it. And he's got this crazy voice that's not his voice, it's a character voice. It's awesome, and he's nice right away. He's trying to do the kind thing of like, tell you what, little girl, you don't have to say a word. You don't have to tell us anything. You've had a long day. We'll take you. We'll give you something to eat. And we'll wash you and get you new clothes, and you have a good night's sleep. And then tomorrow, I'll take you back to your family. That's how great of a guy I am, And so they cart her off to a tent, and he has two guys watching her. And of course, Furiosa's mom has now gotten up to the second to last guy that she shot, and she has put on all of his outfit.
Yep.
Including the skull helmet mask thing that looks really cool. And so she infiltrates this camp. And we should point out, I mean, there are like thousands of guys.
It's a big camp. It'd be one that's hard to infiltrate. So she kind of had to do what she did.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, the Dementis. It's not like he's got like 20 guys that are following him. Yeah, he makes the Sons of Anarchy look like a Boy Scout troop. I mean, it's,
no kidding.
Yeah, it's it's crazy. So she goes in there and she takes out the two guys guarding Furiosa, and she comes into the tent. And it's great because she's using a slingshot, which is really cool.
Right.
Quiet, right? The Daryl Dixon school of, you don't fire a gun, they don't hear you. And in there is this like woman that Dementis has kind of tasked with, you take care of the girl, and make sure she gets something to eat, give her the good drinking water, wash her, do all that stuff. Keep an eye on her and make sure that none of these like, sickos outside want to like molest her, right?
Yeah.
And so she's in there, and Furiosa's mom reloads her slingshot, and she's gonna kill this woman, and this woman like gets down on her knees, and she's like, no, I'm a mother too, and I won't say a word. And she got her hands up, and Furiosa's mom like hesitates, and then shows compassion for this woman and leaves her and grabs Furiosa, and out she goes. And one of the things we got in some feedback from our pal Andy from Germany about the Daryl Dixon show, and we've heard this from other of our listeners as well, is why is it in the Walking Dead universe that everybody that you meet on the road are crazy, evil bastards? Right. That was the comment. Everybody they meet are crazy people. How is this possible? Right. Why is it that the only good people, and I'm using air quotes here, are our main characters in the show? And certainly in Daryl Dixon, the good of Carol is certainly in question. But that point was raised. Why is everyone you meet on the road not a good person? And this scene is, to me, the absolute perfect example in that Furiosa's mom is a good person, and she has compassion and empathy, and that woman in that moment is not a threat to her at all. And so she doesn't kill her, and that leads to her getting killed very quickly, because that woman, as soon as they're gone,
of course,
races up to Dementis. Oh my God, they got away! You got to stop them! You got to stop them! And they shoot at her, and she has like an extra gas tank on the back of the motorcycle, and it gets hit and it explodes, so they don't have a lot of gas, and she's kind of wounded a little bit, and she's bleeding, and then they have a dog that's tracking them through the desert from her blood, and I mean all of these things that if she just would have killed that woman and done what had to be done and had no empathy and no morality, they probably would have gotten away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I just think that is just such a wonderful reason where she did like the human thing that, again, like I think all of us watching is like, yeah, why would you kill that woman? She's not going to do anything to you. Right. Know, but the survivor move is kill her. Kill her immediately, because then there's no one can raise the alarm, and by the time they figure out that the kid's gone, you guys are gone. Into the wasteland, and we see when they're driving away, because there's like a storm kicking up, we see their tracks getting like blown over and disappearing from the sand. Right. And so and immediately you think, oh, they're going to get away, because how are they going to track them? And then you find out, oh, right. They've got the Dementis has these, pit bulls or some kind of dogs that are clearly hunting dogs, and they're, literally got one and is sniffing the sand and leading them, directly on their path. And so anyway, I really like that scene because of that example of like why is it that everyone that's on the road is crazy and evil? It's because they can do those cold-blooded things to survive that most of the air quote good people don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God. The whole fate of Furiosa rests in that moment too.
Right.
It's everything. Yeah.
Well, and it almost goes against what we were just saying, right? Because we just got done saying that clearly the Green Place, the number one rule about Green Place is nobody can know about Green Place, right?
Right.
And anyone that shows up, we have to kill. Yet here she doesn't follow that rule.
Yeah. And it just goes to show it's a lesson. You don't follow that rule, and it leads to the demise. Yeah.
Yeah, all of it. It directly leads to her death. It leads to Furiosa having, what I can only imagine to be a not optimal childhood.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, it's all of that. I mean, there'd be no movie basically if she would have. When that woman goes, no, don't. If she just would have shot her right then, dead, headshot. Even if she doesn't kill her and just knocks her out, and like hurts her really, really bad, that would have been enough. But she couldn't do it. So anyway, I just thought that was really interesting. So
yeah, it's great. So she is eventually captured and brought back to be with Dementus's group, and we've got to talk about Dementus. Your next point and my next point are both relating to him, so we can sort of talk at length a little about it. But what a character.
Oh my God.
I mean, if ever there was a character that had the more fitting character name, because he is pretty demented. And he's got a lot of, he mentions later, he lost his family in violent ways. And so he's got a lot of PTSD in there, which may explain some of it. But I don't know, man. Some of the stuff he does has got to be deeply rooted in some sort of personal psychosis of some kind. I mean, otherwise, how else do you explain the whole attached the whole thing to his nipples in that scene with Immortan?
Oh man!
I mean,
it's his nipples and it's his nose. He has it like through his nose, like a ring, and I mean, and all of them get ripped out. I mean, it's just like oh yeah.
The whole thing. It's so horrifying. But just in general, I mean, there's so much. The first thing you see of him when you first meet him, and it's hilarious because like when I was rewatching, I'm like, it's hilarious when you think about what he is and you know everything about that character, and you look at how he's introduced, and he is getting some information, some historical information from the history man at the time. He's like robed in some kind of white hooded outfit.
It's like a parachute.
Yeah, it's not even, we come to find out, but just the image of it. It's this white hooded thing, which turns out to be like not really like cloth, but yes, like parachute material. And you're like, but the image of him, and he's like sort of on the ground, like kneeling, like learning from the history man, and you just get his back. And then when he turns and you meet him, and then he just from there, it's crazy that he is about as 180 from that first initial physical impression you get. And I laughed out loud as soon as I saw it when I was rewatching, because I was like, knowing who he is and seeing how he's like that first 10 seconds of his introduction, I just laughed because I'm like, I know where he's going. And he's just his whole, everything between how he's written, which is ridiculous, and all of the steps that Chris Hemsworth took to be the anti-Thor, and he succeeds mightily.
He does.
Yeah.
I mean, that was Oscar worthy.
I agree.
That performance, yeah. And you're right, he turns around and we see the girl, and he's like, oh, who's this? And it's just like not Chris Hemsworth's voice at all, Yeah. And you're just like, okay. I mean, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it almost has kind of like a like a doddering old man kind of sound to it.
Which is true. It's true because he said, if you look it up, he said he based it off of his
grandfather,
his uncle or his grandfather is just an older gentleman who he was like, by the way, I love him and he's a wonderful person.
Yeah.
But it was just like the tone and timbre, like
Yeah.
the tone and the timbre of like an older gentleman. So he just has that, and it's so hilarious. The choices.
Yeah.
He did do a little bit of prosthetic stuff on his face.
He does have a big fake nose.
He's got the nose.
Yeah.
So he's doing everything he can to pull you away from I am Chris, totally a model Hemsworth.
Yeah, but I mean, he's still built. I mean, he's still jacked, right? So it's still him. But it was so wonderful, and so there was just enough of comedy running through it. I mean, he's a scary guy.
Sure.
I'm not. But the performance is very silly in parts, and it's wonderful. You just it's particularly when like really the other heavy in the movie is Zimmerman Joe, and he is he's got the mask on, and he's just always kind of you can't see his mouth, but you just get the idea he's always scowling. Right, and Chris Hemsworth was, he was kind of like silly and doddering almost in some scenes when he's trying to like win over Furiosa, and I'm not a bad guy, and he like when they catch those guys and they chain the one guy up to the bikes and they make everybody else fight to get on the bikes, right? Because he's like, I can only take 4 of you in my gang, and we'll figure it out. And so they then are gonna like do the bikes are all pointing in every different direction, and each one's like tied up to one of the guy's arms and his legs and his head, and they're literally going to rip him to pieces when they ride away. And he comes up to Furiosa, who's in this weird cage, and he's like, you don't have to watch if you don't want to. It's like it's gonna get kind of icky. And then he gives her his bear, right? He has this like teddy bear that he has literally chained to his outfit that belonged to one of his youngins, and he's like, here, if you want to hold this, that maybe that'll give you something. So he's trying to be fine. He's trying to be a good guy, but at the same time, he's having these other people rip this guy to shreds.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God, and like you're saying, so like the dichotomy of this guy who's just, if you took away all the horror elements, he would be a slapstick comedy guy in any movie. Mm-hmm. But you take that and then add in that he's also brutal and unyielding,
Right. Yeah.
It's such an interesting combination. It really is. Because he doesn't have to be that, like, I mean, look at how, like, you used as an example Immortan Joe, but, you look at Immortan Joe and how he rules, and how, eventually we'll see, like, the stature that, like, the People Eater has, the stature that the Bullet Farmer has, and everybody's different, but they all have that gruffness about them. And he does not. So he could be that gruff person, but he just is not that guy. And so it's just hilarious that you are laughing at the ridiculousness of Dementis, but you're also totally scared shitless of him.
Yeah.
At the same time.
And like we said, he like has an army of like thousands. I mean, it's not like him and like 10 guys are riding around on bikes. I mean, yeah. So, he is clearly feared and respected because he commands all of those guys.
It's a very Negan sort of feel where this charismatic person is in charge and all of these other people follow them, and it's a survival thing, but they sort of, kneel and bow at him. They do. Bit, So it's, because he's not just in charge, but he's also kind of a god in some ways. They worship at the altar of Dementis in a lot of ways. So but for him to be, he takes like some of the Negan ridiculousness and it's just compounded. It's so crazy ridiculous. Other, let's jump into your point, which connects to Dementis, but we got to talk about the chariot.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's, and you know what? when they first show it, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But then later on, I'm like, how the hell does this work?
Yeah.
Because literally he has like a chariot, like from like Ben-Hur, like from the Roman times, right?
Yep.
And he has, instead of horses, he has 3 motorcycles that are pulling this chariot. And literally he stands in it and he has like reins that are attached to like the handlebars of these motorcycles. And there's some kind of contraption on it that keeps all the motorcycles upright and pointing straight. Their wheels don't really turn, on their own type thing. And when we first see it, there's like a guy sitting in the middle chair, motorcycle, driving it, like you would on a normal motorcycle. But after that, Dementus is like driving the chariot with the reins. I'm like, how are you turning the throttle at any of these things, right? It makes no sense, but it's just this incredibly bizarre, amazing visual that here he is running around the wasteland, and he it's like he's in Roman times. It's crazy. I mean, do you remember when you first saw it, what was your reaction?
It felt so much like everything with Dementus. It felt so ridiculous and also fitting at the same time. I just feel like that's how it is with everything. Of course, he keeps a teddy bear strapped to just above his crotch. Of course, he does. You know what I mean? It all is just par for the course, and the chariot is no exception. He wouldn't be caught dead just riding a regular motorcycle like the rest of the gang. He has to stand out. He has to have a certain, stature, and it definitely shows. It's ridiculous, and I thought so too. I thought at the time, I was like, same as you. How does this work? Especially do you drive it through a sandstorm? How does this happen?
Exactly. Yeah. It's utterly ridiculous. But again,
perfect.
It fits his like sense of weird style. That of course I'm gonna do that. What are you crazy? I'm Dementus.
Why wouldn't I? The other question. It's not the question. Why does he have a chariot? The question is, why wouldn't he have a chariot?
Yes, of course he would. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I love in conjunction with the chariot is that first of all he wears the parachute a lot in this movie.
Yeah.
And they're kind of zipping along and going down the road, and they come upon they see one of the fireworks that the war boys shoot, and they find this war boy, and he has an arrow sticking in his head. And so he's clearly brain damaged because of this wound, and he's sort of like, hey, am I in Valhalla? And they're like, what? And then of course the history man says Valhalla, it's a place for the warriors to go to when they die or whatever. And Dementus is like, we're looking for a place of abundance, and he's like, what's that? And so then he starts the history man starts saying abundance. It means a lot. It's like a full cornucopia, and then the war boy's like, what's a cornucopia? And then finally Dementus goes, a lot of stuff, a lot of really good stuff. But they take the war boy's flare gun, and they're like, what's this? And he's like, they're Skyfires or something. And so one of his guys loads a red one into it, and he shoots it right into the ground right in front of him, and it boom blows up in this big red cloud of paint or whatever, and it Dementus, it covers him, so his white parachute now is pink and red, and his beard is red. And he has this big ass beard, which is really funny, and he's wearing those welder goggles kind of on, and he and he wipes off the goggles so he can see out of it, but his face kind of has this red tinge, and for a good chunk of the movie he's red. It's like, dude, do you not take a bath?
They don't have enough water to drink. Do you think that they're clean? No,
I don't know. Maybe a sand bath. I don't know. But yeah, it's just very funny. Then for the rest of the movie, he has this red beard, right? And it's just, it looks utterly ridiculous. But that's how he gets it. So I just wanted to add that too, so that he's riding around in this chariot and he has a red beard and his magnificent white parachute is now like red and pink.
It's adorable. So sort of switching gears and moving away from Furiosa and Dementis into the Citadel. When they try to raid the Citadel, and we get introduced to Immortan Joe and the Citadel occupants, the people in charge. And some of them are characters we've seen before. You know, we're reintroduced to Rictus is there, Morton is there, and also the People Eater is there. He's not, as of yet, in charge of Gastown yet, but that we know why.
I believe the Bullet Farmer is there too. So
yes, yeah.
And then we should also point out that the organic mechanic is part of Dementis's crew.
Correct. Yeah. So he's not there.
Yeah.
But
he is, but he's not at the Citadel. Not yet.
Correct. So as we're meeting all these characters, it's not just Rictus is his son. He also has his other son, whose name is...
Oh, let's hear it.
Scrotus. I mean...
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Scrotus.
I'm sorry,
not
one more
scrotum,
time.
Scrotus.
What?
Scrotus. Scrotus. And I put it in my notes. I said the name Scrotus. I just can't. It's hilarious.
I'm going to go on TeePublic. I'm going to get you a shirt that just says Scrotus.
I would wear it. The thing is that I have some questions about Scrotus. First of all,
I do too.
What kind of name is that? Oh my God. Anyway, it feels like he's the older brother. Is it just me? Or the way the power dynamic is between him and Rictus, it feels like he's the older brother.
It does.
What do
yeah,
you think?
I would agree. I would agree that he's, maybe not all that much older, but definitely older.
Because he's smaller than Rictus. Like Rictus is like the gargantuan dude. So he has to have something to hold over Rictus, and it's got to be that he's an older. I mean, they don't really say that, but you just get the sense he's the older brother. Mm-hmm. So he has a little bit of authority over Rictus. He has his father's ear a little bit. He's very hot-tempered, very easily upset about things. But the interesting thing is, I was going to include this note in my notes, but I can't really remember, and I want to know, because I think you might have watched this a couple more times than me, and I'm just at a loss. Do we see Scrotus get killed?
No, and that's one of my big questions, which is where is he
in
Fury Road? Because he's not in Fury Road at all, and the last we see of him, the only thing I think of is maybe there's a deleted scene that we don't see, but at the very end, remember, she gets the car that only has 3 wheels.
Yeah, and she takes it from him, and then we just never see him again.
Yeah, so she drives out to like the battlefield where the war boys are like mopping up the most of the Dementis' men, and Dementis has run away, right? He's got like 5 or 6 guys, and they're trying to make their getaway, and this Scrotus's car has got a bad tire, and so the war boys are like trying to find a spare to fix it. And when she pulls up, they're like, "Ooh, this one might work." And so they put it on, and Scrotus is like, "I'm going to kill him. He's yelling. And Rictus is like, "I'm coming with you, brother." And he's just like, "No, you're not." And they're arguing. And while they're arguing, Furiosa gets in the car and drives away. And the very last shot we get of Scrotus is him watching her and kind of scowling. And so, yeah, we never see him die, yet we never see him at all in Fury Road. So that's a huge question for me. Like, cool character, but where did he go?
Yeah, like it's hard to believe that they wouldn't. Like, that's an interesting thing. Like, there's got to be some explanation. Like, introducing a character like that that we know for sure does not appear. So
I had to go double check the cast list, because that struck me when I was watching this on Saturday. I was just like, wait, what happened to that guy? Because
Yeah.
it's just like we just did Fury Road, so that's very fresh in my mind, and I'm like, I don't remember him being in Fury Road, and I went and looked in the cast list. He's not listed, so he clearly is something they invented for this film. To like you said, to create that dynamic of, I think it was to kind of make Rictus not be, like the number one son and, have all the pull and influence. Because if Rictus was that important, he would have gotten Furiosa for himself.
Right.
You know what I mean? As opposed to trying to sneak her out of the vault and all the stuff that he does, which by the way, the actor that plays that character, he had to like go on social media and basically say, hey, you know what, that was a character I was playing and that is not who I am. So stop all the hate mail.
It's so crazy when that stuff happens, when people just cannot separate the art from the artist,
No, it's just like but anyway, it's funny because you were talking about Scrotus, the character, and how he's kind of a hothead and all that, and he is. His first and second and third idea is always attack. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's meet him head on, and at the end, right, when he's like, there are three ways. There's the coward's way where we can sit here and wait. There's the fool's way where we can go off to Bullet Town and maybe run into the bad guys. Or there's the warrior's way, which is go to the gas town and kill Dementis, right? And he yelling. But he reminded me a lot of Sonny Corleone from the Godfather series, the Jimmy Caan character, who, again, total hothead, right? He wants to go to war with all the other gangs, and his dad and then Michael always have to be like, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to figure out a way, all that stuff. And of course, what happens to Sonny, the rest of the gangs realize he's got to go because there'll never be peace. So, they shoot him like 8,000 times at the toll booth. So, but I very much got that sense with Scrotus, that he was kind of a similar dude. But you're right. I don't understand where he went, and there has to be an explanation. George Miller's too smart to not explain it away. But I don't. I do not know. I looked through trivia and stuff for this movie to see if there was anything, and I didn't come across it. So I do not know.
It's also it's interesting because there's no Colossus as well, or we don't see him.
Right.
So
and he looked like, he was not like a kid. He looked like he was older than. He
was an older man. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's like, okay, where and we'll get this when we get to the end, that if I have a nit to pick on this movie at all, it's the connection to Fury Road. I think is way too close to work in the timeline, with what's going on. Like when we watch Fury Road, you do not get the sense that the Citadel just fought this major war with another gang like yesterday, which is what they're implying at the end of the movie. So anyway, but we'll get to that when we get there.
Yeah.
But Scrotus, silly name, silly man.
Yeah. What was his name again?
It was C. Rotus.
C. Rotus? Okay.
S. Crotus.
Crotus? Crotus?
Yes.
Crotus. Okay.
You know what? I think you should just call him Scrotum.
I think so. I mean, why wouldn't you call him Scrotum?
Why wouldn't you? Right.
So all right. So let's talk about your what's your next point there?
It's the same thing as yours, which actually you talk about Furiosa is literally, we see her kind of when we should point out that Dementis goes to the Citadel and tries to take it over and literally gets run out of there by Joe, and the war boys are like literally jumping thousands of feet with their boomsticks and blowing up big chunks of Dementis's gang, and so they all run away. And so then Dementis decides, well, screw that, I'm gonna take the gas farm or gas town. And so they ambush one of the war rigs and they they paint a bunch of their own guys in this mud to make them look like war boys, and then they turn around and they like Trojan horse it, and they get them to open the gate, and they come in, and then of course all these gang guys come out of the rig and they take over, and so now he's running Gastown, and so he goes and he meets Joe, and this is where he loses both of his nipples. And they negotiate it, and they come up with a deal where he'll supply the gasoline, and they will give him the food and the water and the mother's milk, and the bullet farm will give them bullets. It's just kind of the way it's been going, just he's running it. And while they're there, Joe sees Furiosa. And and of course Furiosa she's not a half-life, she's a full life, and he's like, "Hey little girl, how'd you like to join my harem?"
And she's like, "Thank you, no."
She's like, "I'm going to pass," and I'm vomiting a little in the back of my mouth. And
right.
And so part of the negotiate, and it's so great because Dementis is like, "No, she's my daughter. And she's not for sale," and the history man's like, "It would be an arranged marriage, and it would be really good to strengthen the relation." He's like, "No, she's not for sale," and then finally Joe's like, "Is he your dad?" And she's like, "No."
Yes.
And so then part of the negotiations are Furiosa is going to stay with Joe, and also the organic mechanic. So he has to trade that guy. So that's how that character becomes part of the Citadel. And literally he locks her up in the vault with all the treasures. And
he sure does.
You kind of get the idea that it's like, you're just like a little too young right now, but give it a couple years, and then, we'll start, stuff. Icky.
Yeah.
But stuff.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so she's there. And then, like we said, Rictus tries to get her. And Rictus has already been kind of like stroking her hair and, clearly is interested in her. And so she, being smart, plots a way to get away, because she like cuts all she has like little bells in her hair or something.
Yeah.
That like she had back at the green place. And she like cuts all those hairs out, and she glues them to this like little hat. So she's wearing it so that when he grabs her hair and he turns her around and he's like kind of stroking it from behind, she just like beelines it out of there, and he's left holding this weird thing, and he's like, "Huh?"
Yeah.
And
not so smart,
Rictus. He's very strong, dumb. And so she gets away, and she then becomes like almost like a war boy there, where she wraps her hair up so it's not long, and she kind of looks like because she's like 9 or 10, so she's still very androgynous, not developing yet, where she's obviously a girl. And she just kind of blends in, and we kind of get this, okay, a couple years have gone by,
right?
And now suddenly she's Anya Taylor-Joy, and we, like you said in your note, we see her kind of learning and kind of moving up a little, and she, they're lifting up this pickup truck, and like one of the chains breaks, and one of the guys that's on it falls to his death, and so they, I think Scrotus sees her and it's like, "You go down there and fix it, because you're not very big, you won't weigh very much." And so she goes out there and she like does it, man, and she kicks ass. And so when she comes back, he's like, "You're the new dog man," which is like the person that like rides on the rigs like that when they lift them up from the ground. And so we see her doing that for a while, and then we see like them, and they're gonna build a war rig, and she's in there, and she's like part of the team. And and like you said, we're seeing her slowly like moving up and figuring out how things work and getting educated. She's learning how to build the war rig and all of that, and how to weld, and how to do all the stuff that she's going to need to know, to survive. It's really well done. And again, we should say at this point, like, the character of Furiosa has said like 5 lines.
Yes.
So far. I mean, Anya Taylor-Joy does not talk very much in this movie at all.
Yeah.
She has very few lines. I mean, Chris Hemsworth has way more dialogue than she does. by
Yeah,
far.
he's got a movie's worth of dialogue of
Yeah.
multiple people just for him.
Yeah, but she, you know, the character Furiosa does not say much at all. So it's really beautifully done without like having like an actual montage,
Yes.
you know, set to music. It's just we see a couple of instances of her, and every time we see her, it's like she's improved her standing. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
it sort of does like a sort of multiple check-in of like, you know, learning here and learning there and learning wherever, and as they're sort of growing as the Citadel, and she's literally there when they decide that, you know, putting together a big war rig is a new thing, and she's there for like the first driver and all that other stuff, you know what I mean? So she's really there. You know, and I put a note. My note says that she's literally climbing through the ranks, and it's true. Like she started off, you know, doing that thing on the winch there, and her growth as a character, as a person, is like this incremental thing that just happens a little bit at a time, and we see like little snippets of it to sort of see how she becomes who she is, you know.
And it's twofold. It's like we see that she's growing, that she's growing up, she's aging, she's, you know, becoming an adult, she's becoming a grown ass woman, and like you said, we're seeing like her stature. You know, because like remember at one point, Rictus is like, you know, talking to the group, and they're gonna build the war rig, and they're like, "Who's the war rig for?" And one guy's like, "Immortan Joe." Why? Because he looks out for us. And then like he moves to the next person and he goes, Immortan Joe. And then he comes to her and she just puts her hands up and he's like, I'm not hearing anything. And then like one of the other guys there is like, hey man, this person's mute. And they think she is a boy. So they're like, he's mute. He doesn't talk. And then and Rictus is kind of like, well, what's that all about? And they're like, he's a really good dog boy. Like they're like defending her, saying, no. This guy knows what to do. He's good at his job. Leave him alone, right? And it just shows you that she's earned like the other rank and file guys' respect. And they're like, yeah, that guy doesn't say anything. He's mute, but he knows what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to include like just we see this incremental growth that we see. So it's a really important part of her character growth for sure.
Oh yeah.
So then the next point, we both included it in our stuff, and it's, you know, part of this growth is her becoming a part of, you know, this first war rig, and it goes, you know, out on all these different runs, and then there's this one run where, you know, we don't know until later, but she has tagged along. She's the stowaway underneath. But just the whole scene itself is the rig is on its way to Gastown, I think. And they're attacked by one of the guys that...
No, they're on the way to the bullet farm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're attacked by one of the guys who used to be a part of Dementus's crew, but I guess it turns out that he got upset and soured on him and went off on his own again, and that's the Octo Boss guy.
The Octo Boss, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so he has his little sect of the gang, and they attack the rig. And that scene, it's a nice long action scene. There's so many really great things. There's a lot of elements in that scene that are, you know, similar to some of the fights that we saw in Fury Road, because you've got, you know, they have the setup of the rig, but they also have, you know, like the pursuit, and the, you know, they've got the cars sort of rotating around that are like the security, and they're all filled with war boys. And so, you know, and they are also stationed on the rig itself to defend the rig. So, you know, they get attacked, and then this great action scene ensues, and it's just amazing to watch the whole thing from beginning to end. And it's just incredible, because in the midst of it all, you also have, like, you know, these great technical moments too, because one of the engines goes out. So the guy who's sitting in the passenger seat, the Black Thumb dude, who rides with Jack, who's the first rig driver, and he is tasked to go underneath and fix while they're still driving.
Oh, yeah.
And so he goes underneath and he's trying to fix. And when you go underneath and you see that Furiosa is there, she's underneath the rig. She's stowed away when they left. So she's under there, and she also has a motorcycle that's kind of rigged to the bottom.
It is indeed.
So that when they get to wherever it is they're going, her plan was to just, get out of there. She's going to steal away. And it doesn't work very well because they get attacked. So, but then the Black Thumb dude, who's supposed to be doing the repairs, he is injured, and his last thing he does before he gets pulled away or he dies or whatever is he has a tube that he's going to use to fix the engine. And so he gives it to Furiosa, and she knows exactly what she's supposed to do, and she goes and she fixes it. Now, meanwhile, Jack is up in the cab of the truck, and he has no idea that Black Thumb is gone, and doesn't, nobody knew that Furiosa was underneath, but she fixes the engine, and they're able to, he's able to put it into another gear and go faster and try and get away from this pursuit. And it just got so much that goes on there. And she ends up saving Jack. It looks like it's great because they make it seem like she's on Jack's side. And then in the end, she tries to take the rig away from him, and he reacts instantly.
Kicks her right out.
Well, he throws on the brakes and she smashes her head. She wasn't expecting that. And so then he's able to toss her out, and she's gone in a hot second. Like, she put the gun on him and it was too late. So this from beginning to end, it's this fantastic action sequence. And it's also this big moment for Furiosa as well. And then she gets tossed on the side of the road and off he goes. So, what other stuff do you want to add to the Octobus attack?
Yeah, well, the reason why you're right. This set piece chase scene it's brilliant.
It's
and
incredible.
It's George Miller at his demented best, right? But the reason why the Octobus has left Dementus is when they take the gas town. Like I said, they stop the rig, and then Dementus grabs a bunch of the Octobus's guys and makes them put the white mud on them to make them look like the War Boys. And the idea is they're going to drive back to Gastown, and it's going to look like they're attacking the rig, and the War Boys are going to be, the fake War Boys are going to be trying to defend it. The idea is we get them to open the gates, then we get the rig in, then we take it. Well, as they're approaching, the Gastown people are watching, and the guy who's in charge of Gastown, he sees that, they're fighting, but they're really not fighting because no one's getting killed. They're not taking out any of the pursuit vehicles. And he's like, nope, don't open the gate. Something's off. And so the guy driving the rig yells out to Dementus. He's like, we got to slow down. They're not opening the gate, right? And so Dementus then goes, he figures out, they're not buying it. So then he tells his guys, okay, shoot some of them. And so they start killing the Octobus's guys that are dressed as the War Boys. Yeah. And that is what, the Octobus is like, you scum, and so that's why he leaves. He goes off on his own. But the reason why this scene to me is so jaw-dropping is the war rig's zipping along, and they all come out. These guys are all on motorcycles, and a lot of the motorcycles have two guys on them. They have the driver, and then a rider behind them. And the riders, they have these boots that have these little teeny almost like skis on the base of them. Yeah. And they jump off the back of the truck of the motorcycles, and they've got a line and they're like are water skiing behind the motorcycle, but it's on sand, right?
Yeah.
And then, so that's crazy. And this is all real. This is not like CGI. These are like real crazy Australian guys doing these things for real. And so they trail back on these lines until they go taut, and they're kind of slaloming behind. And then they pull ripcords, and they're wearing parachutes, and then they literally parasail up over the motorcycles. So now the motorcycles are pulling these guys, and they're like 35 feet up in the air. And now these guys are like swooping over the rig and the convoy, and they're dropping Molotov cocktails and fighting and shooting. And that's insane right away. You're like, oh my God, you've never seen that before. But then there are other guys, they show up, and they're pulling like hang gliders. And so now there are hang gliders that are taking off and are swooping around and doing stuff. And if that isn't bad enough, then there are guys that they have these like turbo fans on the back of their like their backs, and they use the motorcycles to build up speed. They pop their chutes, and then they turn on these turbo fans to propel them. So now they're not tethered. They're like actually flying over the convoy. It is crazy. Right. And it's breathtaking to see all this stuff. And then the final thing is the Octoboss himself. His motorcycle has a turbo fan, and he is like trailing this black, like it's almost like a hot air balloon, and then it's got this long like tail, and it has to be like 50 yards long. I mean, it's huge. I mean, you can see it from miles away, and they're all attacking the rig at the same time. It's just some of the craziest, most awesome stunt work and vehicle work that you'll ever see in any movie ever. I mean, it's unbelievable. And you're right. You know, the Black Thumb guy goes down to kind of fix the engine, and we see Furiosa down there, and she has a whole motorcycle tethered underneath it. And we saw the scene before when they haven't left yet, she's like loading like food and vegetables and stuff into this like little compartment underneath the rig, which she's obviously going to use to survive, which I think is really an important scene, because that clearly is giving her ideas for, oh, I can spirit the treasures away. Oh, I can put them in underneath the rig there, you know, all these kind of things. And you're right. I mean, literally the like a Molotov cocktail or a grenade or something goes off, and the Black Thumb is really seriously screwed up, and he falls back, and he's holding on to the motorcycle, and you can see like half of him is burned and charred, and he's getting ready to punch out, and she's there, and he sees her, and he doesn't say a word. He just hands her the hose with the clamps on it, and then the motorcycle gives way and gets, he's gone, right? And so she goes to fix it. And then there's this other great scene where this bad guy in a motorcycle, and he's got a sidecar, comes up, and the guy in the sidecar puts literally it's like a bomb out of central casting. It's like 3 sticks of dynamite with like an alarm clock taped to it, right? And it's great. But then he lights the fuse, which I'm like, why do you need the alarm? It doesn't matter. It's great. And so she and he sees her and starts mucking with her. And on this rig, they have these big, like, grabbers, I guess you would call them. They're like hydraulic, like a digger, but they have like a big claw. And the guy's like trying to get her. And then finally one of the war boys operates that thing, and it just reaches down and grabs that motorcycle and just pulls it out enough so it gets run over by the rig's wheels. I mean, it's a great sequence. And so she saves the rig because she stops the fuses, and she takes the bomb with her, so she has this now weapon that she can use later on. It is an unbelievable action scene. It's probably about 25-30 minutes of the movie, and it's just breathtaking. I can't say enough about how great that sequence is. It's I mean, it's amazing.
And it leads right into your next point, because you've got it's sort of the culmination of that has Furiosa connecting with Praetorian Jack, who is the driver of the rig, and you've got your quote there that you pointed out.
Yeah, because like you said, she comes back, and by the time that they beat off the fight and they actually kill the Octoboss, and what did they call the thing in the back? The bomber knocker?
Yeah, the bomb knocker or something like that. Yeah,
and it's literally like it's like three like bowling balls on chains that will spin in different directions. Like one spins clockwise, the middle one spins counterclockwise, and the end one spins clockwise again. And the idea is it's on the back of the rig, and if anybody gets close to it, those things will spin around and just wipe you out, right? And so the Octoboss gets sucked into that and gets crushed. It's great. It's a great death. But anyway, when the attack is finally beaten off, literally the only people left are Praetorian Jack and Furiosa. All of the other war boys and people that were with him are gone. They've all been killed or blowed up or whatever. And so she pulls a gun on him, right? And he hits the brakes. She, gets stunned. He literally kicks her out of the open door of the war rig and drives away. And so she gets up and she sees it, leaving, and she's kind of looks around, and then she turns around and starts walking like the other direction. And then you hear Jack in the background, and he is, very far away, and he's like, I wouldn't go that way. And he basically says the bullet farm is worse than the Citadel, and the only other place out here is Gastown, and that's run by Dementis, and he's such a lunatic, he can't even keep all of his guys together because the Octoboss just attacked us. So he basically says, wherever you think you're going, it doesn't exist anymore, that this is the wasteland, and these three places are the only places out here. There's nothing. And then he says, I've had a real hard day. I lost my crew. I lost my convoy, and I got to rebuild, and I'm thinking I'm going to start with you.
Right.
And then he has this great line. He goes, you got good vision. You read the play, and you keep your head. You may be raw, and I love this part. He goes, but you have about you a purposeful savagery.
That should be the subtitle of the movie. Furiosa, a purposeful savagery.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful turn of a phrase. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
And this is kind of really our introduction to Jack, because we've only seen him in the previous scene.
Yep.
And now we actually get to see him. And I know you have a note a little bit later on here, but I want to ask you about this, because you seem, at least it looks to me like you think that there's like something going on between these two people, and I think their relationship is totally platonic.
I think honestly, because you see it sort of blossom and grow or whatever, but I think honestly it's, however, that's why in my note I put because the next thing that happens is they have their moment where they try to flee together, and that's in my next point. Yeah. But she when they get caught by Dementis and yada yada. But I think I put it, her love is in quotes. I think I don't think that they've been like physical partners in any way, but I think that if they made it away and got away, they would have been. I don't think, I think there's more than platonic there to me, but I don't think it's been, for lack of a nicer word to say it, but I don't think it's been consummated in any way. Right. But I think
they haven't been intimate, you're saying.
I don't think so, but I think that they are very, very close. Very, very close. And I used the word love, like I referred to him as her love, but I used air quotes on there because I think it's open for interpretation. I think whether or not you see a relationship or a platonic relationship between the two of them, I think you can't deny that they are close and that they trust each other very much, and that were both willing to do a whole lot to try and get away. I mean, Jack was willing to put himself in harm's way to help her. Mm-hmm. And you know, so I think that they had like a very, very, very deep connection. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I saw that, and I did see the air quotes, so I just wanted to get a little bit more from you about that, mm-hmm. because for my money, I look at it as that when Praetorian Jack comes along, this is the first person that she has met outside of the Green Place that, you know, she doesn't want to, isn't afraid of, doesn't think is going to kill her, is going to mm-hmm. rape her, is going to eat her, you know, or whatever. He's like you said, you know, he wins her trust. And the biggest moment for me in that is when she shows him that peach pit.
Right.
When she brings that out and shows that to him to kind of like say, this is where I'm going, someplace that has these, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you have to imagine that she's been hiding that thing for what, 15 years, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And never, ever, ever talking about where she's from, ever. And for her to tell a stranger where, you know, you can come with me to this place that, well, remember when we started the podcast, what's rule number 1 about the Green Place?
Yeah, nobody talks about the Green Place for sure.
Right. And if anybody shows up at the Green Place, we kill them, right?
Right.
And for her to take that leap and be like, no, this is where we're going. I mean, clearly she looks at that guy as like, you know what? This guy is not going to kill me and take my stuff. So
yeah.
But again, I when you said that, it made me. I thought about it, and I kind of agree that like if they would have gotten away scot-free, and you know, of course, it raises the question of would the Green Place still have been there? But let's just assume that they get away and that it's just the two of them. I agree with you. I think that yes, they're, you know, if she was ever gonna take a chance on a dude, that's the guy.
Yeah. I think so. I think there's a lot to be said too for that. I didn't include it in my notes, but there's a lot to be said about that moment when she wakes up in the middle of the night and he's there.
Yeah, and
he only keeps her from like stabbing him because she's having a bad dream, whatever. But it's clear that he's there in some type of protective way, mm-hmm. that he's watching over her to make sure she's safe. That's how I took it. And so I think that is something that means a lot to her. A lot of the reason too, I think if you interpret it as, you know, a love of some kind, whether it's a love of a best friend or a love as a, you know, a lover or whatever with Jack, I think that it's clear that her closeness to him is like it figures into my next point, which is that it creates the sort of detached Furiosa we get in Fury Road and doubles down on her resolve to get the hell out of this place because she started out witnessing her mom being tortured by Dementus, mm-hmm. and then she had to witness her love, and I used the air quotes there, be tortured by him. And I only put love in there because like there's a quote later from Dementus when connects all the dots that she's little D, and so she watched him torture her mom, and also he just tortured Jack. He refers to him as her lovey-dovey.
Lovey-dovey, yeah, he does.
And when they are in moments of, because they're both weak when they first bring them over to, you know, begin the torture session, because mm-hmm. she's had her arm has been injured, and so she's losing blood. She's weak. They are leaning on each other, and it's kind of intimate, the way that they sort of lean toward each other in a way.
It's like the Green Place, the way the Green Place people put their heads together.
Yeah, and there's a lot in that gesture. It doesn't say a word. They don't look at each other, but they just sort of lean against each other in a way to show, to sort of be, touching each other to show I'm here and I'm leaning on you and I whatever. But the unbelievable revenge that will spew from this moment where Furiosa has had to watch this as well is it's incalculable. It fuels so much of her. It fuels her revenge for Dementis, but then it also lights a fire in her as well to make it, Jack is gone. I will now be the Praetorian. She ends up being the Imperator. And she's just like, I will be the big rig driver. That will be me. And that's going to be my way out. And I'm going to do it right next time. Yeah. But just so much comes out of that scene where they are tortured. He's tortured and she is tortured for having to watch him. Then when they string her up by her bad arm.
Her bad arm. Yeah. And also, right when she gets her hand or her arm, gets crushed by the big tire of Dementis's truck. Jack gets he gets one of those Walking Dead $1 million shoulder wounds.
Yes.
From one of the guys on Dementis's truck. So, and we should point out that at one point when they visit the bullet farm, the bullet farmer gives Jack a sawed-off shotgun and a handful of shells, which he then gives to her.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
like a
also
gift. Yeah,
it is. He's like, here, this is your and it's first of all, it's great because the bullet farmer refers to it as a boomstick, and for all the Evil Dead fans out there, that's what Ash refers to his shotgun as in Evil Dead 3. It's like, this is my boomstick.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of fun, but also obviously a nod to the original Mad Max, who that was his main armament, was a sawed-off shotgun. So yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, the torture scene there in that, they chain him to a bike and drag him around. Make him run after.
Yeah, make him run, and if he can't run, he's going to get dragged by the arms, and it's just.
And then once he starts getting dragged, then the Dementis lets his dogs out, and they are eating him. I mean, they're running along and shooting. So they just literally do that, and then her torture is that she has to watch.
Yeah.
You said that they did that. But my next point actually is
we got to back up a little to do yours.
Back up a little because what happens is she is now the Black Thumb, and he's teaching her about road war, right? He uses the phrase road war, and one of their runs they go to Gastown, and they pull up and they dump out they have all the food, and they're taking out the mother's milk and the water, and Dementis rides up, and Dementis is like he tells them, I want to have a meeting in 3 days, and then he's like, you guys better leave now while you can. And Jack's like, we don't have the gas yet, and Dementis is like, if you want to get out of here, leave, because clearly the natives are getting restless, and even Dementis
things aren't
can't.
Good.
Yeah, you get the sense that people at Gastown are suffering, and mostly because Dementis isn't running it very well, right? And so they leave empty-handed. They come back with no gas, and they tell Joe that this is what he wants to do. And so it's at this point that Joe and the Bullet Farmer and the People Eater and your favorite character Scrotus and Erectus, they decide that they're going to get rid of Dementis. And so they send the war rig out to the bullet farm, and literally it's like, get every bullet they have, every gun they have, and bring it back here, and we're just going to load up and we're going to go take him out. And so they show up and they come into the bullet farm, and the gate opens. It's a big portcullis thing, right? And they go through it. And once they get inside, well, before they do that, they stop and they make the war boys get off 2 of their bikes, and they put them on this like V8 truck. And Jack makes Furiosa drive the truck, the pursuit truck, not the rig.
Yeah.
And so she's like, no, I drive the rig. And he's like, not today. And so she's kind of trailing behind. And so they pull into the bullet farm. And like the first thing they see is first of all, it's super quiet, right? There's nobody about. And then they see one of Dementis's dogs, and it's like carrying like a human foot in its mouth.
It's not a good sign.
No. And immediately Jack, they both realize. And so Furiosa is able to get out before the portcullis comes back down. And it's a spectacular stunt because the portcullis comes down and just destroys this war boy car. It's great, right? Mm-hmm. Just smashed on. So anyway, the rig is trapped inside. And so Jack decides, well, the only thing I can do is buy Furiosa as much time as I can. So he drives forward because he can't turn around. He can't get back out because the gate's closed. And so this starts this huge fight in the Bullet Town. And that was kind of my next point, in that all the war boys are taken out. And so it's literally just Jack driving this rig against all of these guys. And we find out that Dementis has taken over Bullet Town, and all of his guys are there, and they're like waiting. Dementis kind of figured out that this was probably going to be the play, or that he would want to take over Bullet Town because then he has 2 of the 3, and then he could take the Citadel. And so he's got plans. Even though he wanted to negotiate, he's still going to do the sneak attack and all this stuff. So Jack is trying to fight him, and Furiosa starts to leave.
Yeah.
And she drives about 10 seconds away, and then she stops. And again, going back to her mom, despite all the evil and crap she's seen, she still has compassion. Yeah. And she still has loyalty. And she's like, I can't leave this guy who literally trained me, took me in, got me all this stuff, right? I can't, because they're gonna kill him. I can't do that. So she goes back with, again, the sniper rifle with like this scope that's like bigger than the rifle. I mean, it's this massive scope. It's really cool. And she like starts laying down cover fire and shooting various bad guys that are trying to get him. And sees Dementis and wants to shoot him, but Dementis is like hiding right behind the smokestack in the middle of Gastown, and it's this amazing stunt sequence, because they end up like picking up the rig and dragging it off the road with this like big, like, I don't know what it is, a big like crane or something, right? I mean, I don't know what it's massive, and it's big enough to pick up the war rig, which is huge, got to weigh 20 tons, right? Oh yeah. And she ends up helping him just enough that he's able to get out, and she saves him, and they get away. And it again, not quite as great as the Octobos attack sequence with the rig, but still it's a great, like the last really big set piece action sequence in the movie, and it's really great.
And it's funny, if you think about it, without the like the big monster truck with the big wheels, they may have gotten away, because they may have been able to delay it enough. And it's interesting, because that's the same style of rig that O'Morton Joe uses in Fury Road to be able to continue pursuing.
The pass.
So she's been pursued by a monster truck on more than one occasion. So this will be old hat to her once she once a Morton Joe is on her butt later on. But I just thought that connection was really, really, really cool. And also the thought that, if it was any other vehicle, because they, they have so many other different vehicles that they use to get around. And if they did not have access to something like that, they would have been hung up a little longer, and they may have been able to get away. So yeah, but they didn't. They didn't.
See, this is like one of the first like nits that I pick within this movie, where it's like, they have like a 3.5 minute head start on Dementis, and he catches up to them very fast. Where it's like, really, are you really gonna, I mean, it's almost, it reminds me a lot of the pod car race in the Phantom Menace, that horrible Star Wars movie where Anakin's pod doesn't start when the race starts. So literally all the other guys that are racing, they get like a 35-second head start on him before he can finally get his engines to start, and then he goes, and then his pod is the weirdest thing, is fast enough that it can immediately catch up to them, but it can't pass them. Right? Like it's going so fast that it can get right up behind them, but then it can't go any faster. And this is kind of the same way in that Dementis's truck is so fast that it can catch up to this much smaller truck that has been going full bore for 3 minutes before he even starts to pursue them. But then once he gets up there, it's like he doesn't just blow right past them at like 150 miles an hour. He just comes right up behind him. I was like, really? Are you really going to do that? Are you even going to know what direction they went in? There's so many things where I'm like, I don't know if that would happen. But obviously for the story it has to, because this is where she gets injured, this is where Jack gets injured, they flip the car over, and then they torture them. And again, if she didn't have enough reasons to want to kill Dementis, this is just one more, right? Even more reason. So
agreed. Agreed.
So yeah. But anyway, the fight at Bullet Town is pretty cool.
Yeah, so we get the fight at Bullet Town, then we get my point, which is the torture scene, and then right back to you for your next point.
So literally, she's chained up, her arms chained up to the back of Dementis's rig. He's sitting on the top of it, and he's like drinking like water and like eating like this weird, like maybe it's human meat. It's like some kind of sausage or something. It's really weird. The mechanic said that they made it out of human blood, like Furiosa's blood, because it was pure. Yeah. I don't know. But he's sitting there, and literally they're dragging Jack's body around on this motorcycle, and then other motorcycles are driving around in a circle around the Dementis's rig, and you get the sense that they're like doing it for like hours. And finally Dementis is like, I'm bored. And so he gets on his microphone and he orders them to stop. And he's like, all right, and he's like, they destroyed the bullet farm. We should also say, too, that in the fight in the bullet farm, Jack kind of destroys the bullet farm. He runs into that smokestack and it falls over and it's all on fire. Yeah. I mean, it's if it's not completely destroyed, it's like going to be put out of action for a little while at least before they can fix it. But anyway, Dementis is lamenting the fact that, I take the bullet farm and then they kind of mess it up, and I would have had 2 out of the 3 and I would have had to sit. It's so great. What am I going to do? So then he's like, well, let's get this, kill this girl and get out of here. And so he walks to the back of the rig, and there's this great shot of we see the it's almost like a tow truck, right? It has like that arm that sticks out, and there's a chain coming down from it, and you see Furiosa's arm, but it's from the elbow up, and it's like just hanging there, and she like literally 187 hours herself and cut it off and got the hell out of there. It's just, and again, we all knew this had to happen, right? We all know that somehow Furiosa loses an arm, and up until this point she's had 2 of them, so you knew it was coming. It's really great. And then it's like a double whammy in that once he sees her, then like we see she like has gotten a motorcycle and is making a beeline back to the Citadel, and he gets in the truck in his big big truck to go after her, and she like sabotaged it, and so it like rips like the back axle off of it.
Yeah.
Or
It's
at least
perfect.
takes the. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's reminiscent of when she did the same thing to Dementus's dude way back when she was a kid.
Yeah.
That she, rigged it so that it would, that it slashed his throat like that. And it's a similar thing, except it disables his vehicle.
Right. And so so we see her, how she loses her arm, and now she's armed with even more hate in her heart for this guy, based on what happened. And she like tries to get back to the Citadel, and she goes as far as the motorcycle will go, and then she's like walking, and clearly like her arm is killing her, as you would imagine.
Oh God,
like self amputating your arm, and she literally passes out. And then this leads into your next point, because she kind of wakes up and, oh my God, is it Icky?
Yeah, well, there's two different things. There's and I can jump from one right into the other, but after she gets away and she's trying to get back to the Citadel, there's one moment that like I was confused by the whole like, where did Scrotus go thing? Like, that's more of a question thing. This is a choice. It's a direct choice, and I don't like it. I think it's way too neat and cute for when she does pass out for her to be saved and dragged to the Citadel by Max.
Well, she's not, though.
They make the intimation that is what happened.
No,
he sees her.
Yeah, but he doesn't go help her. He's just up there observing. That's what I took from it, was that
I don't take it that way. I think they show him, he sees her, and then the next thing you see is her being dragged, and you don't.
Right. I took it was that crazy woman who, when she was a little kid, tried to drag her into one of those like underground caves. It goes against Max's thing. I mean, his whole thing is, I only help myself. Why would he expose himself to help her? And then why would he I don't know. My reaction to that is, it's just trying to tie the two movies together. And so we see that Max is already observing the Citadel from that elevated position, and he just sees someone, he doesn't know who it is, staggering back to the Citadel. I never got the idea that he goes down and helps her. That's really interesting that was the first thing that you thought of. Wow.
Well, it doesn't make any sense that it would be anyone else. Who would find her out there?
One of those, like the people that go and get the water.
Yeah, but she's like miles away. She's not close.
She's fairly close to the Citadel.
I disagree.
Yeah.
Because the people that she ends up with, which is the next scene with the whole like under the ground and whatever, you don't see them outside of those caverns unless they're gonna pour the water. So I don't know how they would get like no matter how far it feels, whether it's 1,000 feet, a half a mile or whatever, that's sort of like based on how they filmed it. I guess that's like how you view or judge distance. I guess it doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't make sense that those people would leave their little caverns to go out and scavenge unless it's right outside their door. They leave to go get water when they turn on the spigots, and they do, but it's right there in front of them. They don't have to go anywhere. They live directly, like kind of underneath where the water would be, released, but so I'm not saying there couldn't have been some other unrelated third party who brought her to the Citadel that went past. Is that possible? Absolutely. I just feel like the way that scene was structured, I have always thought that he's the one that sort of dragged her there and then dropped her and left or whatever. And that's how I interpreted it. I didn't see anyone else as a possibility. But I think the fact that they don't show you who does drag her, I think that that's one of the cool things about an art form like this, which is you interpreted it one way and I interpreted it mine, and neither one's wrong. They're just because there's no information that tells you definitely one way or the other. It's just, it's just feelings and emotions.
It would be a really good question for George Miller.
It would be. I still say, let's say, I'll concede this. Let's say it's not Max. Max does not save her in any way. I still feel like I don't like him being there because we didn't need that connection. I think it's extra. I think it's not necessary. We already have all of our connections to the first movie. I think it was, to me, it felt excessive. Like Max is sort of on his own. His story is separate. It didn't feel like it needed to be connected to the Furiosa story in any way. Like this needed to sort of be its sort of own course. So regardless of whether he did or didn't help her, I still don't like that he's there.
Yeah.
I think it's a little, I think that's a little too neat and cute. And, it's fine if that's what it is. It's supposed to set up that he has traveled to that area before, and has looked out upon the Citadel before, but I don't know. It feels cheap to me. And there's so many things that have such purpose for him. It just felt like, it didn't have as much thought to it. That's just how I felt about it.
Yeah,
so.
No, yeah, I get it. I do. And again, they don't really show us. We just see her being dragged from it's like a close up of her on the ground.
Yeah, like from her
dragged.
Perspective of being dragged by the feet or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't ever see who it is. And like I said, it's a wonderful question to ask either George Miller or Nico Latharis, or Lathoris, however you say his name, who wrote the thing, to see what was their intention, what did they think about. But like I said, to me, the reason why that shot's in there of Max is, he's in the same position there as he is at the beginning of Fury Road.
Sure.
His car's in the same spot. He's standing there kind of observing what's going on. You know what I mean? So to me, that was just George Miller saying, okay, we're getting closer to the events of Fury Road in this story. We've almost caught up to it, kind of a thing, So we're just saying Max is there, and we all know what's going to happen. But again, it's really funny because I never thought that was Max ever. And all the times I've seen this, I always assumed it was the crazy woman who, clearly is, I want to help you. And, the maggot thing, it is as disgusting as it is. They actually, do have medical advantages and help do stuff. It's just disgusting as all get out.
Nobody
right?
wants to look at that.
Yeah.
So that leads into the next point, which is, the woman who we're not sure who did or did not, I use air quotes here, rescue her.
Yeah.
But her next plane of conscious thought, she wakes up and she's back in those little caverns where when she was very first at the Citadel ages ago with Dementis, and they tried to take the Citadel, and obviously they miscalculated it poorly. And Immortan Joe is just like, he sends all the war boys down and they start whatever. There's a moment where she's dragged into one of those holes, and Dementis is like, he pulls her out, and he saves her, and then they escape and get away. So she's back in one of those holes, but we never see really, you just get a glimpse of what's in there. You never really get an idea of what actually goes down in there. Well, it's questionable what actually goes on down in there. But one of the things they do is they take rotting flesh and they have maggots in there that are essentially cleaning it off. And that's happening on her little stump there. But there's also random body parts hanging from the ceiling. So you have got to assume that they're cleaning it up so that they can be eaten.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So total cannibalism. Absolutely.
Yeah. Without question. But the and you're right. There are medical properties to using maggots. They clean and also they clean the bacteria, and that's what they feed on. So they just continue to eat bacteria, so it'll clean your wound. And then there's also, they secrete something that also helps, almost like a covers it. It almost protects
it's like a scab almost. And and it helps your system scab over the wound.
Correct.
And And again, it's creepy, but that's something like, that's been happening for thousands and thousands of years, before there was doctors and hospitals and so on. It was just
gross but effective.
Yeah.
But when you wake up, last thing you knew is you were on a motorcycle, and then you were trying to walk to the Citadel. And when your last conscious thought was walking to the Citadel, and when you wake up, and if the next thing you are fully aware of is maggots on your arm, you're not ready to hear about the medicinal properties.
No.
You are just running really far, and she did that. And I do not blame her one bit.
I mean, the thing that just gets me every time is that we see the maggots, and they're like on her stump, right by her elbow, and everything. But then it cuts to the woman, and she's got like a fork or a knife or something, and she's like scooping these maggots off of like an ankle and a foot. And at first I'm like, oh my God, they're like, she got injured on her foot, and they're using them to clean her foot too, because and then it pulls back, and it's like from the knee down, somebody's leg is like hanging, like
that's
in a
not her
locker.
foot.
Yeah, it's not her foot. And then you notice there's like all kinds of body parts, and you're like, oh my God, they're all cannibals. Get out of there.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's terrible. Right. It's crazy too, because it's got it had like sort of hints of the Road in there. There's some really horrific moments in the movie The Road where they come upon cannibals, because once you get to a point where you can't create any more food and there's no more meat, people will do drastic things. So it's horrifying, and Furiosa is like hell to the no, and she runs, and I don't disagree with that.
No. It's great too, because she the big crane thing is down at the bottom of on the ground. And she like comes up to him, and she's like, "I'm Furiosa," and the guy's like, "Yeah, you are not." And then she yells it again, and she's like, "What are you doing there?" And so they bring her onto the elevator, and she goes, and she basically tells Joe and all of the other guys that Joe hangs out with what happened, and that Dementus now has the bullet farm, and he's coming for the Citadel. That's his plan. And this is where they decide kind of the final battle. And it's great because Erectus is like looking out of a telescope, and he's like, he's doing something to Bullet Town. I think he's blowing it up. and it's like a decoy. Like, they want to draw Joe's guys over to Gastown, so that, kind of following in Max's plan in Fury Road, of that Joe's going to send all of his troops out to go to Gastown, leaving the Citadel undefended for them to come in and get. And she sniffs that out right away and is like, nope, that's he wants you to go to Bullet Town. And
you can tell it would have worked if she hadn't intervened, because they were all so, because they've all been set up as men that react hot-headedly. They react immediately upon the thing that they can see, and they're like, they're going to do something right away about that. And she helps,
She
direct them away.
And you got to give Joe credit. He listens.
Yeah.
And doesn't just dismiss her as, a girl.
Yeah.
And basically is like, no, we're going to make him think we're going to the gas town.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they send out some of his vehicles, and I think, don't they put their plows in the ground, so they're kicking up a lot more sand, so it looks like it's more. It looks like
a big war party going out, and it's not. It's just a couple of vehicles, and they're like you said, they're kicking up dirt to make it look bigger than it actually is.
And I also thought it was really cool in the meantime in that Dementis, all of his guys, they're driving in maybe 4 or 5 wide down this probably an old riverbed or something, and in the lead they have a truck that's spraying water or gas or something on the ground in front of them, so it's wet, so they're not kicking up any dust at all.
Right.
Which is just really smart of him, so that you're not giving off that telltale plume of, wow, there's a whole bunch of guys driving over there, that you would be able to see from the Citadel. And so I thought that was really fun and clever. And then they see the cloud of dust from Joe's guys, and Dementis now falls for it and goes, yep, they're stupid, let's go. And so he goes charging in, and then we kind of get a little montage almost of you have to assume there's some massive fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't really see very much of it at all. And at the same time that the fight's going on, Furiosa, and this is another nit that I picked, in about 3 minutes builds her mechanical arm.
And it has a lot of qualities. We see a lot of them when she finally gets up close and personal to Dementis, that there's
it's got a motor on it.
Yeah.
And it's got a cutter. And I mean, it's I'm sure it would dispense his Diet Coke somewhere in there. I mean, and that was kind of my point was wow, she sure did build that prosthetic arm fast. Because she builds it and it fits and it works perfectly, and she's able to go out and the battle is just ending.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm really? Could you really do all that quickly? Keep in mind, with one arm, but yeah, she does. And so now, and I believe she also cuts her hair off.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Does.
She's had long hair. And I did a little fun trivia fact. They wanted to have her cut her hair for the whole time that Anya Taylor-Joy's on screen. And she had modeling contracts with various companies that she was going to represent that prevented her from cutting her hair.
Oh, wow.
That they're no. If you wanna do the photo shoot or the commercial or whatever it is you're going to do, we're hiring you with your long hair. We're not hiring you with the bob or the shaved head. So that's why they shot that scene at the very, very end or at the very, very beginning, so it would grow back. I can't remember, but it was only then when they did it. But so and then she puts the black grease over her forehead, so now she looks like Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
In the whole outfit, she's got the mechanical arm, she has the shaved head, all of that. So now, again, we're inching even closer to the Fury Road film.
Yeah. The only thing left is for her to wrap up her revenge. So
Chapter 5. Beyond Vengeance.
And it's all just about, she said way back when they first were we'll set up a decoy and whatever. She said, she had just gotten back to the Citadel and, had the scene where she said, no, that's a decoy. You need to not follow that. If you go there, you're going to lose and whatever. So when that scene was over, she says to Immortan Joe, if you get him, she's talking about Dementis, if you get him, he's mine.
Right. And she doesn't ask. She tells him.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a lot to be said there about, a man wanting to be told, how to do things and whatever. And to be fair, when you see a Morton Joe doing something decisive in both movies, he gets a lot of suggestions. He gets a lot of advice and counsel from everybody around him. Everybody's opinion is valued there. And in this instance, she's not just saying, I think it would be wise if I'm the one who tortures Dementus. No. Like you said, she does not ask, she tells. And right. I think Joe in that moment is so taken aback by how forward that is, how, she's taken a lot of risk by doing that, and she honestly doesn't care, which means that she is ridiculously motivated, and he doesn't say no.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't say yes in that moment, but he does not say no. And he just regards her and then just continues on. And then she sets about making the quickest mechanical arm anyone's ever seen.
That's right.
But then she gets this chance now that she's all outfitted as, the Furiosa we know, and she's ready to go. She's not just gonna... This is her own road war that she needs to fight. And so she outfits herself in exactly the way that she knows that she needs to, and so, she runs, she gets a spare vehicle. I use the word vehicle in air quotes. And it's missing that third wheel. Missing that third wheel. She pulls up to where the front of this ongoing battle is. Cause there's a quote, from the History Man where he's talking over, the scene you said where it shows little scenes of the war going on. And he says it's 40 days. So they fight back and forth for 40 days with Dementus's crew. And she drives out to where the battle, sort of the front, I'm going to use air quotes, is. And Rictus and Scrotus are there. And, they're arguing. Scrotum.
Scrotus. It's like Beetlejuice. I love it.
And so I can't get over it. And so she comes out there, and her intention is to get a vehicle and get the hell out of there so that she can follow Dementus. They have basically, at this point, this is the last sort of battle. They have overcome a majority of Dementus's crew, and the ones that have survived have fled. And there's like 3 main members, and it's Dementus and 2 of his people, and they've fled.
It's like, Dementus and like 4 or 5 guys are all that's left of the like thousands of guys he had.
Yeah. And so they're basically like, oh, I need a vehicle. This one doesn't work, and I need tires. So, Furiosa pulls up, and they're basically like, yeah, that'll do. And they take a tire off of the car she drove up in. They put it on his car. Then Rictus and Scrotus, which is so great when you say them together, Rictus and Scrotus. They start having...
It's Rictus Erectus, so...
I know, that's his full name, which is...
Yes.
Oh my God, it's so terrible. Although when you think about the fact that, Furiosa came from the group called the Vulvolini. I mean,
yes, I know.
Could we be more Georgia O'Keeffe about it, please? Thank you. So anyway, Rictus and Scrotus, the comedy duo of the century, are off having their, I'm coming too. No, you staying behind. No, I'm coming too. You staying behind. The brother.
I'm telling Dad.
I'm telling Dad. And they're having their whole like sibling rivalry thing. And Furiosa's like, peace out, homies. She gets in the car and she...
Oh, yeah.
And she chases them down. And, Dementus did a good job of trying to lead them in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. Like hiding his getaway. But she eventually figures it out. There's a couple of, I'm not him, blah, 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 whatever. So she eventually gets caught up to the real Dementus. And then we have this really, really great scene between the two of them. And it's just incredible. She doesn't say a word the entire time. She doesn't say a word.
She says, like, do you remember me?
Yeah. That's like, it. Which is great because it's exactly what she says to Joe in the movie. She says, remember me. So so she's got this whole great scene, and as usual, Dementus has 4,000 lines and Furiosa has 1. But it's just this entire, and it's not even a fight, really. They literally are Mexican standoff, but of wills, and he's spouting off every little thing he can. And when he, it takes a little time, and when he finally makes the connection that Furiosa is little D, and that she's also, he can tell that she's the one that got away, that had the arm thing, because that wasn't too long ago. It was only 40 days ago, even though she has the new arm, which she built so quickly.
Right.
But he makes the connection finally, and he says, I love this quote. He says, brilliant, and I'll be dead, and you will still be sorrowing your lovey-dovey and your mummy magnificent, you idiot. You can never balance the scales of their suffering. Right. So he susses out that this is all a revenge trail for her. She's not doing anything in the name of the Citadel or anything like that. She's here as Furiosa. That's it. And he makes a really good point, which is, yes, he's saying it to fight for his life, but his point is, you can kill him, you cannot kill him. It doesn't matter. It's never gonna, when he realizes who it is that she's in revenge for, he knows what he did to those two people. And he knows that he did terrible things. He doesn't apologize for them at all, but he's basically like, there's nothing that you can do to me that will ever equal out what happened to you, no matter what. And basically like, go ahead and kill me, but it's not going to work. You're not going to feel better, which I think is really interesting, because he's not wrong. He's totally not wrong.
No, yeah, he makes, in his own way, the argument that I have made when we're talking about The Walking Dead multiple times, where we meet characters who think that whatever their suffering was somehow is above everybody else's suffering. Yeah. And no one could possibly understand the pain that they've gone through. And he's like, you idiot, I'm just like you. Yeah. I want my wife and kids back too. Right. And you can't. And she keeps saying, like, I want my mother back. I want, she says that. And he's just like, I got nothing for you. OK, there is nothing to do. And then I love it when he tells that, he looks her in the eye and he says, you and I were the same in that we want this pain to go away, and we want to feel something. And when we do something that makes us feel not this horrible pain, it's great, but it's so fleeting. And then when it goes away, we want that feeling again even more. And so we're just going around doing horrible things to feel this feeling of not this pain, and and the way he explains it is just really great. And he's not, like you said, he's not wrong. She puts his gun up to the back of his head, right? And he's like, that's when he's like, go ahead, you pull the trigger. That bullet will blow me away. I will be dead so fast I won't even hear the gun fire. That's how powerful that bullet's going to be. And you know what? Once you do that, my suffering's over. I'm going to be dead, and you're still going to be here, and you're still going to feel just as awful as you do now. Because like you just said, it's never going to be enough. It's never going to go away, ever. Yeah. And it's great.
Yeah, it's a really great line. I love it. And it leads right into, you used a line from this scene as well.
Yeah, where he looks at her and he goes, we are the already dead, little D.
Love it.
Yeah. And again, he's a horrible guy, but you do feel a little sympathy for him in that he probably wasn't always a horrible guy, but the wasteland and the end of the world made him or made him an even more horrible guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
At some point, he probably was, I don't want to say a decent guy, but, he was married, he had kids, and he loved his wife and his children, like a decent person would do.
Right.
But look where he is now.
Again, I draw the comparison to Negan, you know?
Yeah.
We got that Negan backstory stuff where we're supposed to, he was not a perfect person, but he was definitely more of a normal person.
He was not Negan, that's for sure.
Yeah. He was just kind of a douchey dude,
Mm-hmm.
and then, the apocalypse changed him,
Yeah. And again, if you want to survive the apocalypse, you're going to have to change. So.
Right. And it's the people that won't change that have the hardest time,
surviving.
Surviving. Yes. Yeah.
They like you said, they're the ones that they go first because they can't do the icky stuff you have to eventually do. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
We've sort of worked through our top 10s apiece. Is there any other sort of final things you want to say about Furiosa before we stick a fork in her?
There again, this the nits that I pick with this movie is, it seems to me like they're because the movie ends, she kills Dementis, and then we get this shot, and the scene, it almost looks like it's a scene from Fury Road that they cut out, because I watched it a couple times and it really looks to me like it's Charlize Theron and it's not Anna Taylor-Joy, but we see her spiriting the treasures out of the vault, and we see them going into the bottom of the rig, and you get the idea that literally the next day Fury Road happens.
See, I didn't get that at all. I got that there's a passage of time because when she go ahead.
Okay. No. Why? Can you explain why?
Because she turns Dementis becomes the tree. And the tree grows, and the tree gives her a peach, and she cuts up the peach and she brings it to the vault. So we're talking at least a couple of years, because you've seen time. There's at least some time has aged Dementis's face. So
yeah, but Dementis is dead though, and that guy in the tree is alive.
How do you know Dementis is dead?
Because we see her shoot him. Remember, and the history man is people, some people want to say that she tortured him and dragged him behind his motorcycle, or then a scene of him and he's in the tree, right? And he's all kind of crucified and stuff and so on. And but they actually show her, and it's in silence, but she walks up and she just shoots him in the back of the head with that pistol. That's what maybe I didn't interpret it correctly, but yeah, that's what I got. And then the guy, the old man that's got the tree growing out of him, that guy, that's not him. I never got the sense that was him.
I see, and I interpreted it as the history man saying that was the fact that there is no history. We only have story. The story is that she may have done these things. The story is that she did all of these other things. But what she really did was she brought him back to the Citadel and he became her peach tree. That's how I interpreted it. And she just never told anybody about it, but he lived out his life, that the rest of his life being that. And she never told anyone, so no one ever knew. So it just became more of a like a parable or whatever. We never got the full story, so he's just sort of piecing together that she would have done to him what he did to her. So, you know, string him up on the tree, da 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 da, whatever. But there's no evidence that she did anything. He's just sort of filling in the gaps, and she, you know, has him where, you know, hidden somewhere and becomes a tree, and she's the only one that knows that it's there or whatever, and it is what it is. That's how I read it, you know.
You know, I can see that, except for the scene of Max overlooking everything. What is he just camped out there for 20 years? Yeah, it just that scene doesn't make any sense then to me. Of
Right.
when we see Max basically, you know, in the same pose that we see Max for the first time in Fury Road. I mean, he's, you know what I mean? He's right there. He's got his crap sitting next to his car. You know, everything there's.
But you have to admit that there's at least some time jump, because the war itself lasts at least 40 days, they said. And if she gets back to the Citadel and then they send out their people and they start a war, then at least from when she got back with her severed arm and said, you know, when you get him, he's mine, it's at least a minimum of 40 days.
Well, see, because
so he didn't stay on that ridge for 40 days.
Yeah, but see, I interpret, again, it's all interpretation. I interpret like all of the fighting with, you know, taking Bullet Town and the rig and all that. That's the 40 days. It's not like from when she gets back and tells Joe, you know, he's mine. The battle lasted 40 days from that point. I kind of looked at it as that's the end of the 40 days, and that they ride out and they destroy Dementus's army very, very quickly, which is why it seems ridiculous to me that you know, she builds her arm in like 20 minutes and is able to go out and catch the end of the battle, and then you know, she goes out and kills Dementus, and then it comes back, and then she's like, you know what, now I'm going to spirit away the treasures. And this is where I have the huge problems with it, because it's like, well, where did they get the other war rig from? The one she drives in Fury Road, you know, how did they build that? When did she work out the deal with the raiders in the mountains to, you know, give up the tanker and blow up the pass? When did that happen? You know, there's so many things that I'm like, the timeline just doesn't make sense for me. But again, and the reason why is that shot of Max is that why, you know, what, he came there and then he left or something. I mean, it doesn't work for me. And again, it's just my interpretation of it. So I think I would really like to ask George Miller what the hell's going on. Yeah.
And again, like you said, it's all interpretation. That's part of the reason why I don't like the inclusion of the Max thing. Because I think it sets you, like, it set you into putting that timeline in a certain way. Whereas if you remove him, like, to me, I feel like the timeline makes more sense, and that there's more added time in there that you just don't see. But again, interpretation.
I guess.
So I interpret it as that peach tree, that's Dementus at the end. So that's how I interpreted it.
You know, he's awful scrawny, man.
Well, of course he is. He's been feeding a peach tree for a few years.
I guess. I don't know. I did not get that at all. I just got it that for whatever reason that tree was growing in there already. And I kind of thought,
how would it have grown? The whole point is she did it with her peach pit. She grew a tree from her seed.
How do we know?
I think it's implied. It's implied that she did it. So, and I that's where I feel like that's the passage of time. So the passage of time is waiting for the peaches to grow, and when she gets one, she brings one to the wives, because those are different wives than were in there when she was around. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, no. When she goes in there at the end, it's like, you know, the CGI equivalent of the cast from Fury Road.
Yeah. What's great about I'm curious what listeners feel like. How did you guys interpret those scenes? Did you see them like Steve did? Did you see them like I did? Do you have like a total third scene, like a third way of looking at it that we didn't even discuss? Because you should let us know. That would be fantastic to hear. I would
Yeah.
love to know how other people saw that, So yeah, so anything else that we didn't touch on? I'm looking through my stuff and I don't think I had anything. I do love the idea though of the tattoo that she did on her arm. We didn't include it, but I love that. And then it's like, oh, you never see that. Well, that's because she loses that arm.
She loses that arm, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was a really cool way to have that map for her so that she could always find her way back home. And it's something small that only she would know what it means. So
right. Yeah.
Great.
There are a couple little Easter eggs that are in the film that are references to the previous movies. At the end of the film, Dementis is wearing the exact same knee brace that Max wears in the original films.
Ooh.
You know, it's these two metal bars that go down his leg, and it's the same getup, so that's kind of cool. And at the very end, when he goes off and he does not take his chariot, he has one of his other guys pretend to be him in his chariot, and he goes off on a regular motorcycle. And the motorcycle we see, it has like a mannequin tied to the front of it on the handlebars. Okay. And that is a nod to the original Mad Max, where one of the toe cutters guys, one of the bikers, has a mannequin that he takes around with him, and they kind of he kisses it, right, and it's acting all crazy about it and stuff. And at one point, they set it up on the beach and they shoot it with a shotgun and blow big holes in it. But that's also a little nod to that moment. I feel that he's kind of giving us a little reference. So we get a reference to Mad Max, we get a reference to Mad Max 2, and we get a reference to Beyond Thunderdome. So all three of the original films, there's something in there that brings us back to it.
Nice. Such a good job of like connecting all of the world together,
Yeah.
Which I think is great.
I did read, when I was looking up trivia and stuff, I did see that George Miller has said that there's not like a real chronology of the movies, of events, like when did one happen versus another, other than Mad Max, and clearly the Mad Max 2 follows Mad Max. I mean, that's obvious.
Right.
But after that, when you get to Thunderdome and then these two films, there is no real, like when we see Tom Hardy's Max, like we don't know for sure if he did Thunderdome yet or not. You know what I mean? And
right.
And the reason being is that kind of what you were just saying is that we don't really have history. These are just stories that are out in the wasteland about this guy, about this, in Furiosa's case, this gal. And so did they happen? When did they happen? We don't know. It's just these are the stories that the survivors pass along, to each other, because what else are you going to do for entertainment? You're going to tell stories, and so yeah, and so
exactly.
this Mad Max guy, Max Rockatansky, he's sort of this weird kind of like Paul Bunyan like folklore type character almost. Right. That and same thing with Furiosa. Furiosa's like, she's larger than life, and could she exist? Yeah, she could, but we don't really know. Maybe, So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. That was what George Miller was going for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that does it. I think that wraps everything up for us for this week.
Wow.
So we're going to deviate from our usual path, which is when we're finished chatting about whatever it is we're chatting about, we usually would take a break, but we didn't. Sadly, we didn't get any feedback for this, but we'd love to still hear from you. So please, after listening, if you guys are, if you think of something, or like I just said, if one of those scenes that Steve and I don't agree on, like how did you take those scenes? And is there something else that you disagreed with us? Like maybe you and I agreed on a scene. Oh yeah, that's the way it played out. And they're like, no, this is what really happened. Write to us, tell us. We want to hear it. Art is all about how you interpret. So I'd love to hear some differing thoughts and feelings on scenes and stuff like that. I think that'd be fantastic. So that being said, please send us your feedback on this movie and also our feelings on the movie. Let us know if you agree or disagree with anything. So coming up on the podcast, we are we're gonna cover a series again. It's gonna be so much fun. We'll be here week to week. We are going to dip our toe into some more. I would call it futuristic. This is more sci-fi for us than usual. We're gonna dip our toe into the new Dune series on HBO. So I hope that you guys have started watching. My episode 1 is sitting in my DVR and getting ready to be watched. The way we're going to do it is we're going to cover episodes 1 and 2 next week on the next podcast, and then we will cover as it comes out. So week to week, just like any other TV show. So, send us the feedback. So we'll record on the Monday night for the show that premieres on Sunday. It is on Max, but from what Steve was saying, it doesn't drop until the same time as the show premiering on broadcasting, as it were.
Well, that was how the first last night. That's how it went. That
hopefully it changes.
Yeah, maybe they will speed it up to like what AMC does, where it's like 2 or 3 in the morning on Saturday night, Sunday morning, when they make the episode available on their streaming service. But we'll have to see. I don't know. HBO is a different animal, and maybe they just say, nope, it's available to everybody at the same time. So
yeah, this is new territory for us. So we'll have to see. But either way, we'll still, and if we find we have to adjust our schedule because of that, maybe
we record on Tuesdays or something.
Yeah. But we'll try it out and we'll see. So for now, we're gonna follow the same as previous. We will have that show. It's gonna premiere on Sundays, and we will. For now, we're gonna podcast on Mondays on that. So Dune Prophecy. Get us your thoughts and feelings. Get in there. I have not watched the first episode yet. I just did not get to it yet. It just premiered last night.
Yeah,
but like I said,
it's for about 12 hours. So
yeah, so I've got. I have time. I have until next week to watch it. So get out there and watch that first episode and watch episode 2 and give us some feedback next week. I would love to hear from you.
And I believe it's 6 episodes, 6, maybe 8. I listened to another podcast and they were reviewing the first couple. And from what they said, each episode is over an hour long. So it's a little longer of a show. Sometimes you get these episodes that are like 42, 44 minutes. So, these are like over an hour. But
supersized episodes.
Yeah, right. That's what AMC would call them, sure. And from what I've heard reviews that do not go into specifics, so I don't know all that much about what happens, but I have heard people say that it is pretty good, that they like it, and it has Olivia Colman and Emily Watson in it, and so I will watch those two do anything. So I'm sure it's going to be good.
Yeah, pretty much. And the only thing I know about it is because they didn't release very much. There's a lot of visuals, but not a lot of what's going to happen. But all I know is that it's supposed to take place before the events of
10,000 years before Paul Atreides is born.
Just a scotch
Slightly
before
earlier,
Paul
yes.
Atreides. Yeah. Slightly. It's mostly in the past.
Mostly in the past, and from what I gather, it's all about the founding of the Bene Gesserit and how they get going. So
amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And when it kind of popped up there, I think we both had the idea at the same time of like, ooh, let's cover that. So,
yeah. I'm like, ooh, let's do this.
yeah. So
It
I'm
just
looking
worked out
forward to it.
timing wise perfectly because we aren't covering a series right now, and then had the premiere, and I'm like, oh well, we should be doing this.
we should do it, and the good news is it'll be over before Christmas, so it's not like you gotta try and watch it over the holiday
Right.
weekends and all that stuff. And so yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited.
Speaking of fun and excitement, what you doing next weekend there, Steve?
Well, I was gonna go talk to Ray Wise, but then he canceled.
So forget about him.
So forget him. Yeah, I will not get to meet Leland Palmer this weekend, which is too bad. But yeah, Days of the Dead Chicago is happening, and I don't know how this is possible, but it really looks like Michael Kudlitz is going to be there. So
all signs point to yes. In fact, not only he's going to be there, I think he's there all 3 days.
He's there all 3 days. You can buy photo sessions for him. So I think if they're selling photo ops for him, they really think he's going to be there. So,
yeah, that's a good sign.
Yeah. So I'm gonna see if we can get a plug for the podcast from everyone's favorite Abraham, and
I love it.
So that'll be fun, and yeah, it's a couple people from the Brendan Fraser Mummy are going to be there, and they're going to be fun, and there's a lot of Terrifier people there, and while I don't particularly like those movies, those people are super nice and fun, so that'll be great. And we're going to do all the convention stuff, do a little shopping and walking around and people watching, and then we're going to, go have a wonderful dinner and gab session afterwards. And that's always like better than going to the show anyway. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys are in the area, I hope you already have tickets because
oh my God,
pretty much sold out for every day, which is crazy to hear.
I've never seen it where they're posting on their socials that saying that there are very few tickets left at all. And that you will not be able to get them at the door, which has never happened at the show before.
I think that's great. I think it's amazing. It just goes to show how much it's grown since you started going, and then even just when I've only been going a couple of years, and it's definitely grown huge since I started going with you. So it's
and
great to see.
They've already changed locations once. Like when I first started going, it was like out in Palatine, which is a suburb of Chicago. And it was at a hotel, and it was a very, very small hotel. And it was, they clearly had to move because back then, like, it was too crowded. And I'm sure they were violating all kinds of fire codes because there were people crammed in. You couldn't move around. It was bad. And then they moved it to where it is now in Rosemont, and it's a bigger space. But if this is what the attendance is going to be like, they might be outgrowing this space, and maybe they're going to move to a bigger place from this. So yeah, it's exciting, and it's great because that means it's going to keep going, and they're super fun.
Yeah,
so
it's a really, really great event. So hopefully those that are planning on attending, I hope you already have your tickets.
Hope you got your tickets, because you ain't gonna get one if you just show up.
So we're looking forward to that. We're looking forward to hearing your feedback on what you thought of our thoughts on Furiosa, and also we're excited to get some feedback from you on the new Dune series. So send that all in to us. We're looking forward to all of it. So that's gonna do it for us this week, guys. We're looking forward to chatting next week, but until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve. Remember me.
Don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because the body shots, no, they just don't work. So, Diana, if people want to get in touch with us, how would they go about doing that?
There are some great ways to connect with us online and leave us your comments and feedback. So to send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter handle is @AFTHpodcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. The best way to keep in touch with us is to like our Facebook page. Head to facebook.com/aimfortheheadpodcast to get all of our updates in your feed. Insert our little funny
commercial.
Mhm.
The guy with the terrible Australian accent.
Yeah, who was that guy?
Oh my god!
Don't hire him again.
You know what? I went through so many people. He was the best one. Okay.
I love it.